Chapter 3765, The Row, 2. As expected, Gao Mingjiang grabbed the thick stick and bellowed at the old lady. "Mother, what are you doing?" After that, he snatched the stick from the old lady and threw it at the three boys. They all burst into tears when they were hit by the stick. "Dad! Mom! My uncle is killing us! Help!" The old lady was shocked by what she saw. Her fourth son, Gao Mingjiang, had never been obedient, but he had never been this merciless either. "Go away!" Gao Mingjiang tossed the three boys to their father, who had just arrived. "Mingjiang!" The second eldest son was furious. "What kind of uncle are you?" Gao Mingjiang smirked. "I'd like to know what kind of a father you are. You lost your bedroll, so you've been asking my family for everything all the time." His brother blushed. That was indeed the case. They didn't have much money to begin with. Moreover, they were in such a hurry that they didn't bring many belongings with them when they took off. As a result, they had to rely on Gao Mingjiang for almost all their expenses on this trip. However, "Yours is the Gao family's, isn't it? You don't own anything." "Old Mrs." Gao glared at Gao Mingjiang. Gao Mingjiang smirked. "I'll leave without taking anything, then. I don't want anything. I'm leaving this family." "No." "Old Mrs." Gao refused outright. Gao Mingjiang was in charge of everyone's well-being and safety, and he wouldn't be allowed to leave. The other brothers shook their heads as well. Gao Mingjiang smirked and told his wife, "Pack up. We're leaving tonight." Li was bewildered, but she still followed Gao Mingjiang's order and started moving the things into the carriage. Feng Wu was amused. These people were so unreasonable. Since they all depended on Gao Mingjiang, why did they pick on him all the time? Did these people think that Gao Mingjiang wouldn't abandon them just because they were his mother and brothers? They were too confident in themselves. Feng Wu felt sorry for Gao Mingjiang. Soon, everything was packed. Li walked up to Gao Mingjiang and tugged at his sleeve. Gao Mingjiang looked at old Mrs. Gao, who was so angry that her face was livid. She stared at Gao Mingjiang. "Are you really leaving?" Gao Mingjiang nodded. "I have to protect my wife and children because no one else will." "Old Mrs. Gao asked, "What about your mother? Are you going to leave me behind?" Gao Mingjiang said, "My three brothers can look after you." "Old Mrs. Gao said, "No, they won't." Feng Wu snickered. The old lady knew perfectly well how unreliable her other sons were. Gao Mingjiang remained unperturbed. Seeing the determination in her son's eyes, old Mrs. Gao panicked for no reason. It was as if she had lost her faith. "Old Mrs. Gao burst into tears. "Gao Mingjiang, how could you do this? How could you abandon your mother? How could I have such an unfilial son? If I had known, I would have drowned you in the toilet. You heartless man." "Old Mrs. Gao pounded her chest and stomped her foot, rolling around on the ground. Gao Mingjiang gave her a long look and suddenly dropped to his knees. Chapter 3766, Leave 1. Gao Mingjiang gave her a long look and suddenly dropped to his knees. Thump, thump, thump. Gao Mingjiang kowtowed 3 times, then jumped into the carriage. "Hiya!" Gao Mingjiang drove the carriage away. "What?" The Gao family was dumbfounded. Gao Mingjiang had mentioned several times that if they picked on his family again, they would go their separate ways, but no one believed him. They thought he wouldn't leave them behind. Even if he would abandon his brothers and sisters-in-law, he would never abandon his mother. But now, Mom, Mingjiang is gone. Seeing that the old lady was still standing there in disbelief, her second son rushed over, grabbed her by the shoulder, and shook her. "Mom, wake up." For a moment, everyone was shouting at her. Only then did old Mrs. Gao come back to herself. She was frustrated when she saw that the carriage was only a black dot in the dark. "So be it. We'll do just fine without him." The old lady smirked. "We don't need to follow them. Just let them go. We won't die without them." She sat down on the ground and snorted. Realizing that Gao Mingjiang had really abandoned them, The others were angry as well. They snorted and said, "Mother is right. So be it. I'm sure we'll be fine." After that, they all went back to bed. "Brother," the second son looked at his older brother guiltily. The oldest son patted him on the shoulder. "Brother, it's not your fault. Mingjiang is heartless." The third son nodded as well. "That's right. How can he do that? He's so protective of his wife and children. Aren't our children his nieces and nephews? He's so selfish." "Stop it." An angry voice broke the silence. Everyone looked up and saw that it was Gao Mingkuan. His eldest brother glared at him. "Gao Mingkuan, what are you doing?" Throwing a rod over his shoulder, Gao Mingkuan smirked. "I'm going to find my brother." "How dare you?" This eldest brother glared at him. None of the other three could fight. If Gao Mingkuan was gone, no one would be able to protect them. Gao Mingkuan snorted and wanted to leave. However, old Mrs. Gao stopped him with teary eyes. "Mingkuan, are you leaving me as well? Do you not care about me anymore?" Gao Mingkuan frowned. "Mother, it's not that I don't want to look after you, but you've crossed the line. Brother Mingjiang has been doing everything for us this whole time. We've been eating his food and spending his money. Mother, why did you take all the money from him and insist on keeping it to yourself? Is that even fair?" "Of course it's fair." Old Mrs. Gao smirked. "He's my son, so he has to work for me. What's his belongs to the family. So what if we all use it together? If I don't take the money from him, your other brothers will starve to death." The other sons all nodded. "Old Mrs. Gao said, if he's so capable, it's only natural that he looks after his brothers and their children." Chapter 3767, Leaving 2. The other sons nodded again. Gao Mingkuan was furious. "You leeches! You've been feeding him money without even saying thank you. My brother is right to leave. I wouldn't give you a dime if I were him. I'm leaving too." Gao Mingkuan stared at them. All his three older brothers were lazy, hypocritical, and selfish. They took advantage of Gao Mingjiang and never appreciated his kindness. "I'm leaving too." Gao Mingkuan stormed off. "You're not leaving. You can't leave." Her brothers and sisters-in-law grabbed him in unison. Without Gao Mingjiang, they could only count on Gao Mingkuan. If even Gao Mingkuan abandoned them, they wouldn't be able to survive. "Mother," the second daughter-in-law tugged at the old lady. Old Mrs. Gao found her second daughter-in-law quite annoying at the moment. Had it not been for her, Gao Mingjiang would never have left. But under the circumstances, the old lady didn't have time to blame anyone. She stared at Gao Mingkuan. "Are you leaving? If you do that, I'll kill myself in front of you." But Gao Mingkuan only smirked. This wasn't the first time that the old lady had threatened to kill herself. Every time Gao Mingjiang wouldn't do as she said, she would threaten him with that. Gradually, Gao Mingjiang became distant from his mother. Anyway, she was all bark and no bite. Gao Mingkuan didn't think much of it and still wanted to leave. Old Mrs. Gao gritted her teeth. She recalled how decisive Gao Mingjiang had been when he left, and the thought pained her. Somehow, she summoned up her courage and cried out. Thump! She smashed her head into a wall nearby. "Mom!" The second daughter-in-law only cried out after the old lady smashed her head into the rock. She could have stopped the old lady in time. With what had happened to the old lady, everyone turned around in a hurry, only to see blood gushing out of the old lady's forehead. The eldest son smacked Gao Mingkuan on the head. "Are you trying to kill? Mom? Mom, please don't die." The second daughter-in-law rushed over and threw her arms around the old lady. Old Mrs. Gao was actually fine. She was about to scold Gao Mingkuan when her second daughter-in-law whispered something in her ear. The old lady immediately changed her mind and pretended to be very weak. "Mom's breathing is very weak. She's dying." Her second daughter-in-law shouted at Gao Mingkuan. Gao Mingkuan rushed to her side. "Mom." Old Mrs. Gao opened her eyes and gave Gao Mingkuan a long look. She only said, "Mingkuan, I want to see your brother one last time. Tears rolled down the old lady's cheeks as she spoke. Gao Mingkuan was flustered. He had thought that the old lady was only putting on an act, but, "I'll go get him now." Gao Mingkuan jumped into a carriage and dashed off. Old Mrs. Gao only sat up after Gao Mingkuan left. Everyone looked at her. Old Mrs. Gao snorted. Did he think he could take off with his little family and leave all of us behind? In his dreams. That's right. The third daughter-in-law nodded. Don't even think about abandoning us. We're his responsibility. However, no matter how long the old lady waited, Gao Mingkuan never showed up. A few hours passed. They woke up at dawn, but Gao Mingkuan still hadn't come back, nor had Gao Mingjiang what was going on. Chapter 3768. What's going on? 1. What was going on? However, old Mrs. Gao and the others couldn't care less about Gao Mingkuan now, for they had run into some new trouble. Because while they were sleeping, a group of people were sneaking toward them. Boss, I've figured it out. They have 2 capable sons, but they're nowhere to be found. That family is very vulnerable now. The speaker was a young man. He had approached the third daughter-in-law of the Gao family, pretending to be weak. He then gave her a steamed bun and got everything he needed to know from her. He knew Gao Mingjiang was gone, Gao Mingkuan had gone to look for him, and everyone else was very upset. The young man named Mo Ping told everything to his leader. They were a team of bandits that had entrenched themselves in Flying Tiger Mountain. They used to be from good families, but because they couldn't survive in the wilderness anymore, they turned into bandits and robbed passers-by in this area. However, there weren't many of them, so they only robbed small groups. If a passing group seemed tough, they wouldn't dare to make a move. Have you gathered all the information? Is it correct? The leader stared at Mo Ping. Mo Ping grinned. Boss, I handed a woman a steamed bun, and that stupid woman told me everything. They're a family. There's an old lady, her 5 sons, and their wives and kids. The 2 youngest sons are the most capable ones, but they're gone. The rest of them are all useless. Good. Boss Ding patted Mo Ping on the shoulder. If you succeed this time, you'll be rewarded. Mo Ping asked excitedly, Boss, can I have a horse? Why not? With a wave of his hand, Ding said, Follow me. There were only over a dozen or so bandits, and they carefully made their way toward the Gao family's campsite. Had it been any other day, someone would have kept watch, and Gao Mingjiang would have arranged everything. But now that Gao Mingjiang was gone, no one else was there to give instructions. They went to bed, snoring loudly. Seeing that the members of the Gao family were fast asleep, Mo Ping looked at Ding and made a throat-slitting gesture. Should I cut their heads off? That was what Mo Ping meant. Ding pondered for a moment. He couldn't help but recall how intimidating Gao Mingjiang was, and he shuddered. If we don't wake them up, we'll grab the thing and leave. If we wake them up, we'll kill them. Ding decided not to go too far. The others nodded in agreement. They weren't born criminals, so they didn't try to kill anyone. The members of the Gao family were fast asleep. They didn't even wake up when the carriage was driven away, let alone the horses. Someone cried out, Stop! It was Gao Mingkuan. Not only did he frighten Ding and his men, but it also woke up the Gao family. Who's there? What's going on? The eldest son didn't like being woken up. By then, Gao Mingkuan had dashed off with a stick. The robbers have taken the carriages. Stop them. Robbers? The carriages. The sleepy members of the Gao family woke up from their reverie. They were dumbfounded when they saw what was going on. Chapter 3769. What was going on? 2. They were astonished when they saw what was going on. The carriages carrying all their luggage were gone. Gao Mingkuan was chasing after them. In front of Gao Mingkuan, a group of people were driving the carriages away. They were moving so fast that Gao Mingkuan couldn't keep up. Those people seemed to be very pleased with themselves, and they all turned around to show off. The robbers! Only then did the members of the Gao family realize that they had been robbed. But our carriages! Food! All our food is there! And everything we've saved. And the silver. Without the carriages, how were they supposed to travel? How were they going to survive without food? Without money, what would they do from now on? Even old Mrs. Gao's silver was in the carriage, so she ran as fast as she could. She shouted at the top of her lungs as she ran, asking the carriages to stop. The other members of the Gao family finally heard her scream. They ran as fast as they could and shouted the same thing. They tried everything from threats to bribes, but to no avail. Not only weren't they going to give back the carriages, but half a dozen people even jumped out and surrounded Gao Mingkuan, beating him up. We're taking these carriages. If you don't want to die, get lost. In the end, Mo Ping kicked Gao Mingkuan, jumped into the carriage, and left with the others. Gao Mingkuan curled up to protect his head and internal organs. He was injured in many places and even had a broken bone. He lay on his stomach and couldn't even move a finger. He could only watch as the group of people rode off in their carriages until they turned into black dots in the distance. By then, the Gao family had finally caught up with him. Seeing Gao Mingkuan lying on the ground, the second son was worried sick. He bellowed at Gao Mingkuan, "Where are our carriages?" Immediately, everyone gave Gao Mingkuan accusing looks. Gao Mingkuan was covered in wounds, and it was so painful that he couldn't utter a word. The second son shouted at Gao Ming, "I'm talking to you. Where are the carriages?" Gao Mingkuan shook his head. "They've taken the carriages away. Gone." The second son was furious. He pointed at Gao Mingkuan and scolded him. "How could you let the carriages get stolen? Do you know that they contain everything we have?" The third son shouted anxiously, "There's food up there. We've saved up so much. How are we supposed to proceed without a carriage? Are we going to walk on foot?" Poor Gao Mingkuan. He was so angry that he could barely breathe. Phew. At that moment, his sisters-in-law finally arrived with old Mrs. Ga. Hearing that the carriages had really been taken and that everything was gone, the old lady was so furious that she fainted. "Mom!" The second son steadied the old lady and scolded Gao Mingkuan. "Mingkuan, you lost the carriages. Do as you see fit." Chapter 3770, Vomiting Blood, 1. Gao Mingkuan cried out and spat out a mouthful of blood. Somehow, he found the strength to stand up. Sensing the change in Gao Mingkuan's attitude, the second son felt intimidated. He glared at Gao Mingkuan. "What now? I'm your second eldest brother. Are you going to defy me now?" Gao Mingkuan stood there unsteadily and smirked at his second brother. The second son gave the oldest one a pleading look and tried to ask the latter for support. The eldest son stepped out and frowned. "Let's treat Mingkuan's wounds first." "But where can we find the medicine?" The second son shook his head. The eldest son frowned. "We have to treat him even if I don't have any medicine. Here are my clothes. Tear it into strips and bandage Mingkuan's wound." He then took off his top, tore it into pieces, and bandaged Gao Mingkuan's wounds himself. Gao Mingkuan was going to leave, but his brother stopped him. Moreover, he was too severely injured to leave, so he had to stay. "What are we going to do now?" Everyone turned to the eldest son for help. The eldest son frowned. "What do you think we should do?" The third son said, "No matter what, we have to get our luggage back. And the food and the carriages." His wife said, "That's right. It belongs to our family. We can't let them take those things away." The eldest son glanced at her. "Are you going to take it back yourself?" "Well," the fierce couple stopped talking altogether. "Well, we can let Mingjiang do that," the third daughter-in-law mumbled. "He was able to take our horses back from those people, and he can do the same now." "That's right. Let's go find Mingjiang." Old Mrs. Gao was furious. No. She had made it clear that she had fallen out with her unfilial fourth son. "Mom, are we going to starve to death just like that? Do you know how far we have to go?" Her three sons glared at her, and there was nothing she could do. Just like the old lady herself, those sons could be ruthless to their family members. "Where's your brother? Take us to him." Everyone looked at Gao Mingkuan. Gao Mingkuan knew that he had to go to Gao Mingjiang now. After all, they were all family. Seeing how miserable they were, his brother would probably give in. I know where my brother is. I'll show you the way. Gao Mingkuan's right arm was broken, but his legs were fine, so he could still walk. He led the team and the others followed him. At first, they were all high-spirited and only wanted to catch up with Gao Mingjiang, so they ran as fast as they could. But they were lazy people in nature. As they grew tired, their high spirits soon faded. They had been traveling in carriages the whole time and had never needed to walk on their own. I'm starving. I'm so thirsty. I'm so tired. Many of them were frustrated. Before long, the third daughter-in-law couldn't take it anymore. She sat down on the ground and said, I'm not taking one more step. I'll die if I keep going. As soon as she sat down, the others sat down as well and didn't want to move. Chapter 3771, Vomit Blood, 2. As soon as the third daughter-in-law sat down, the others sat down as well and wouldn't move a muscle. They were in a sorry state. They were covered in sweat, and they were hot, thirsty, and exhausted. I can't walk anymore. I can't feel my legs. My carriage. The third daughter-in-law started crying. Her second sister-in-law looked exhausted as well. Seeing this, she couldn't help but ask, Our carriages have been fine this whole time. Why was it stolen last night? The third daughter-in-law said, It's all because Mingjiang is gone. If he's here, these thieves won't dare to pick on us. Her second sister-in-law nodded. It's all Mingjiang's fault. However, before she could finish, the third daughter-in-law asked, What did you say? Her second daughter-in-law said, Am I wrong? It's all Mingjiang's fault. He left us behind. It was already evening, and they had been walking for most of the day without any food or water. They were all exhausted. However, the third daughter-in-law suddenly jumped up and slapped her sister-in-law. There was a crisp smack. The second daughter-in-law was dumbfounded. You! The third daughter-in-law said, You've reminded me. Why did Mingjiang leave? It was all because of you. If it hadn't been for what happened earlier, would his family have left? The second daughter-in-law felt a little guilty. What are you talking about? What did I do? I only tried to borrow the duvet. What did I do? Borrow a duvet? You were fine when there was no duvet around. Why did you have to borrow one now? You make it sound like you've never tried to take things from Mingjiang before. You took advantage of them just the same. Not only won't you admit your mistake, but you're also blaming me. Cuihua, I'm going to make you pay. Wu Tsai Miao, I'm not afraid of you. Ah. The two of them ran into each other and started tearing each other's hair. It was a fierce fight. The two of them used to be on friendly terms because they had worked together to set up Li, their common enemy. However, now that Li was gone, the two of them started fighting. Stop it! Aren't we having enough trouble already? Stop it! The eldest daughter-in-law was speechless. She didn't know what to do because no matter which one she tried to stop, it would be like she was siding with someone. Mother, aren't you going to do something about it? She turned to the old lady for help. The old lady had a cold look in her eyes, and no one knew what she was thinking. As for her sons, they had all gone out to look for food, saying that they were going hunting. No one knew when they would be back. The two daughters-in-law were finally tired. They lay on the ground and gasped for air. No one made a sound, and no one knew what the others were thinking. The first day, they survived the cold and starvation. The second day, they woke up from their despair and resumed their journey. But they still couldn't find Gao Mingjiang's family. They were so hungry that they couldn't see straight. If only Mingjiang was here. If Mingjiang were here, we wouldn't be like this. If it hadn't been for Brother Mingjiang, we would have been in this state 2 days after we set out, Gao Mingkuan said indifferently. No one said a word. Brother Mingjiang saved our lives. You knew that, but you just wouldn't admit. Chapter 3772, Plague 1. Gao Mingkuan glared at them. You just won't admit it. You've been giving him a hard time, bullying him, and stealing from his family. Power my brother. Would have abandoned you already. I wouldn't have waited until now. Before, none of the others would admit that. But now, without Gao Mingjing, they were all starving. Their legs were unsteady, and they were so thirsty that they thought their mouths were on fire. All they wanted to do was cry. The third son said, "But where is Mingjing? Where is my brother?" The second son said, "If we find Mingjing, I won't take advantage of him anymore." The others nodded as well and pleaded, "Where is Mingjing? I know we deserve this, but he has abandoned our mother as well." Gao Mingkuan said indifferently, "Who knows? I didn't catch up with him either." Hearing that, the others lost all hope. They hadn't eaten anything in 3 days. When they were hungry, they would eat the grass on the ground, but the grass was dry, and they spat it out as soon as it hit their mouths. "There's a rat!" The third son suddenly shouted and dashed off. There was indeed a rat a short distance away, but it was obviously dead and already stank. But for the sake of a dead rat, the brothers almost tried to kill one another. Old Mrs. Gao sat on the ground and cried, but there was nothing she could do. "Let's make some soup for everyone with this rat." They carried the pot with them earlier, so it wasn't stolen with the carriage. Gao Mingkuan frowned. "No, it's a dead rat. You can't eat it. You'll get sick." However, the people of the Gao family were so hungry that they couldn't see straight. They didn't care if they would get sick. If they didn't eat, they would die. Hence, the dead rat was thrown into a pot, and everyone drooled over it. Gao Mingkuan couldn't let that happen. Hence, when no one was looking, he kicked the pot and spilled the soup. "Arg! My rat meat!" The Gao family was furious and tried to take the rat meat. However, Gao Mingkuan picked up the rat and ran as fast as he could. He then tossed the rat into a creek in the distance. The Gao family was so hungry that they couldn't run as fast as Gao Mingkuan. It took them a while to catch up with him. "Where's my rat? Where is it?" They surrounded Gao Mingkuan and were worried sick. Gao Mingkuan pointed into the distance. There. A dead rat was indeed lying in a creek a short distance away. It was a dead rat with a tempting smell. But the creek was deep in the valley, so they couldn't go down. "Arg!" The third son, who was starving, smacked Gao Mingkuan on the head. "Why did you do that? I'm going to kill you. That's our life-saving meat. How could you throw it away?" "Gao Mingkuan, I hate you so much. Why can't you be dead? You're going to get us all killed." Everyone was blaming Gao Mingkuan, including old Mrs. Gao, who was hitting him with the pot. Gao Mingkuan said stubbornly, "It's a dead rat. You can't eat it. It'll kill you." "Who told you that?" Just then. Chapter 3773, Plague 2. Just then, 2 people showed up at the foot of the mountain. Both of them wore tattered clothes and looked as filthy as beggars. They found the dead rat. The 2 of them were over the moon and immediately picked it up. They divided the meat into 2 halves and stuffed it into their mouths. The Gao family was so jealous. The eldest son glared at Gao Mingkuan. "Someone has eaten rat meat. Why can't we eat it?" "That's right. We've been starved for days. What's wrong with eating some rat meat?" "Gao Mingkuan, are you trying to starve us to death?" "Fine, we won't eat rat meat, but you have to make us something to eat." Gao Mingkuan blushed and wanted to retort, but he couldn't. He only mumbled, "You can't eat it. You just can't." "Who told you that?" "I heard Miss Feng talking about it with Brother Mingjiang," said Gao Mingkuan. "It's that Feng girl again." The third daughter-in-law flared up at the mention of that name. "She's such a troublemaker. If it hadn't been for her, Li would never have been so stubborn. Mingjiang would never have fallen out with us because of his wife's pillow talk. It's all Feng's fault." Gao Mingkuan glanced at her. "Sister-in-law, you still haven't realized your mistake, and you're still blaming other people. I don't think anyone will help you when you starve to death." His sister-in-law stared at him. "What did you say?" Since Gao Mingkuan had made it so clear, he couldn't say anything else. He only smirked and said, "You can savor what I said." After that, Gao Mingkuan sat down on the side and didn't say another word. The Gao family didn't find any dead rats anymore because even those were in high demand. They couldn't just find them everywhere. They had to dig up wild grass and vegetables, as well as white clay, to keep themselves alive. Come, let's go find Mingjiang. We'll only survive if we find him. They struggled to their feet and stumbled forward, shouting Mingjiang all the way. Occasionally, carriages or ox carts would pass them and keep moving forward. Old Mrs. Gao burst into tears of jealousy. They used to have carriages as well, and Mingjiang had found them. As for the rest of her sons had been too busy taking care of their own families to care about her. Old Mrs. Gao missed Gao Mingjiang even more. She even saw that her sons all ate some wild fruit on their own without leaving anything for her. That wasn't what Mingjiang was like back then. She would have starved to death if it hadn't been for Gao Mingkuen's help every now and then. In the most difficult situation, they finally realized how good it was to have Gao Mingjiang around. If we find Mingjiang, I won't pick on him again. Actually, Feng is a nice girl. She's very lucky and knows how to pick up things. Not only that, but she also knows how to hunt. She has hunted rabbits before. It's been a while since I ate meat. My stomach. We don't even have any chaff, let alone meat. Seeing that they had finally changed their attitudes, Gao Mingkuen went up to old Mrs. Gao said casually, "Mom, I think I saw brother Mingjiang." What? The old lady was shocked. Chapter 3774, Meet Up 1. What? The other members of the Gao family were thrilled to hear that. Where is he? Just tell us where he is. Say it. They were already exhausted, but after hearing what Gao Mingkuen said, they were all excited and almost jumped to their feet. Everyone stared at Gao Mingkuen with eager eyes. Gao Mingkuen cleared his throat. If you can change your attitude, I'll take you to my brother. If you still behave like before, even if you can find him. The third son immediately said, I understand. If we're still as greedy, hypocritical, and selfish as before, even if we find him, he'll still abandon us. Gao Mingkuen thought, so, you know how greedy, hypocritical, and selfish you were. He looked at the others. The exhaustion and starvation had worn them out. They would agree to everything. The third daughter-in-law said, I shouldn't have said those things. I shouldn't have bullied Mingjiang's family. They had been helping us all along, but I'm sorry. The others apologized as well and asked Gao Mingkuen to tell them where Gao Mingjiang was. They had made up their minds. They would never let Gao Mingjiang leave when they found him again. Gao Mingkuen glanced at his mother, who was the most stubborn one. She had always wanted to share wealth with her family because they were all her sons. Since Gao Mingjiang was doing better than his brothers, she wanted to share some of his wealth with her other brothers. Old Mrs. Gao glared at Gao Mingkuen. Why are you looking at me? Am I that kind of old lady who can't tell right from wrong? Gao Mingkuen thought, you really are that kind of a person. The old lady knew by now that Gao Mingjiang was the only one she could count on, so she snorted. After we find Mingjiang, I'll let you live separately. I'll stay with Mingjiang's family. As for the others, it's none of my business. Mum, the other sons panicked. Just then, the eldest daughter-in-law tugged at her husband's sleeve and whispered, our top priority now is to find Mingjiang. We'll talk about the rest later. Her husband. Mom, you can do whatever you want after we find Mingjiang. You'll call the shots. The eldest son turned to Gao Mingkuen. Can you tell me where Mingjiang is now? Where was Gao Mingjiang? Led by Feng Wu, the fourth branch was living in a treehouse in the woods. On her way here, Feng Wu noticed that someone had set up an inescapable trap to catch her. If she had set out on her own or revealed a little spiritual essence, they would have caught her by now. Luckily, she was with the team and was still safe. As for the Gao family, Feng Wu looked at Gao Mingjiang and knew that he wouldn't stop caring about them. Before he left with his family, he was more aggrieved than angry. After everything he had put in, his mother was still biased, and his brothers were still picking on him. No one could stand that, but when he calmed down again, he was a little worried. What do you think will happen to them? Under the treehouse, Gao Mingjiang was making charcoal according to Feng Wu's instructions, while Li was busy making bacon. Chapter 3775. Meet Up 2. Li glanced at Gao Mingjiang and asked indifferently, "What do you think they'll?" Gao Mingjiang asked, "Mingkuan is with them. I think they'll be all right." Despite that, he still climbed up the tree again. It had been so long, but they still hadn't arrived. They only traveled for 2 days before taking camp here, and they had only covered about 50 kilometers. It had been 3 to 5 days since he left the others. Where were they? Could something have gone wrong? Gao Mingjiang frowned. Li heaved a long sigh. "I knew it. You're not heartless. You still care about them." Gao Mingjiang smiled bitterly. "After all, they're my mother and brothers. Even if they're unkind to me, I can't just ignore them." I said, "That's why we've been waiting here. We're only 2 days' ride from them. Without you, they'll have a hard time. That way, they won't be so unreasonable when we meet again." Gao Mingjiang said, "I thought the same. I've told Mingkuan how to get here. He should have brought them here already." The two of them were perplexed, but Feng Wu knew the answer. Little Phoenix had snuck out and told Feng Wu what happened in the Gao family. Feng Wu was dumbfounded. The carriages were stolen, the luggage was taken, and there was no food. With a whole family of lazy people, it was so frustrating just to think about it. However, the Gao family would never forget this lesson. Feng Wu didn't care if the Gao family traveled with them. In terms of living comfortably, it would be best if the Gao family weren't around. However, to stay safe, the more people there were, the less likely Feng Wu would be spotted. Therefore, she didn't mind having the Gao family with them. Therefore, when Gao Mingjiang turned to Feng Wu for help, Feng Wu said indifferently, "Don't worry. They'll be here soon." After some thought, Feng Wu said, "Make some porridge. I don't think they'll have the stomach for pancakes." Gao Mingjiang and Li nodded. Feng Wu's capability in the past few days was enough to impress them and make them follow her orders. In the past few days, Feng Wu had gone hunting, made charcoal, and found a place for the cabin. Her ability to survive in the wild was unmatched. Feng Wu had hunted countless animals and even caught a boar. The whole family was over the moon. Normal people wouldn't dare to go into the woods. Even Gao Mingjiang wouldn't survive. However, Feng Wu went in and came back with a pile of games. However, Feng Wu still reminded him to give all the credit to Gao Mingjiang, and she only wanted to be an inconspicuous nobody. Li had cleaned up the wild boar and turned it into dried meat. She then put each piece in a sack so that they could take a bite when they were hungry. It was getting cold, so the meat could last for a long time. Meanwhile, the Gao family was 5 kilometers away and was at a loss. They were dumbfounded when they saw the dead bodies on the ground. The dead bodies were obviously rotten and gave off a foul smell. Just then, 2 people staggered out. Their faces were scarlet red, and they couldn't stop shaking. Chapter 3776. Contagious 1. The third daughter-in-law of the Gao family cried out, "Why do these 2 people look so familiar?" Her husband said grumpily, "Of course they do. They're the 2 people that took the rat meat." Everyone took a look and saw that it was true. "What's wrong with them?" the third daughter-in-law cried out. "Why do they look sick? And they're coming our way. What do they want?" Wrapped in thin, worn cotton, the 2 men were stumbling toward the Gao family as if they were going to fall at any moment. "Please give us something to eat, we." Seeing how pitiful they were, the eldest daughter-in-law felt sorry for them. She took a vegetable pancake out of her chest pocket and was about to hand it to them when Gao Mingkuan cried out, "Don't touch them." The eldest daughter-in-law glared at Gao Mingkuan. "Mingkuan, you're so mean." "Peace." However, Gao Mingkuan cut her off. "Fall back. Everyone fall back. He's been infected by the plague. Don't let him touch you." The plague? How was that possible? However, before they realized what was going on, the person who had been stumbling around suddenly found the strength to throw himself at them. He wrapped his arms around the eldest daughter-in-law's thigh. "Ah!" she screamed. Gao Mingkuan and the eldest son tried their best to help her. But that person wouldn't let go. Ouch! Not only did he hold her thigh, but he also bit down and blood gushed out. Arg! The eldest daughter-in-law panicked. She could still hear Gao Mingquan's voice in her head. Plague, plague, plague. She was so frightened that she fainted. Gao Mingquan took out a rod and smashed it down on the head of the man holding the eldest daughter-in-law's thigh. The man swayed and finally let go. The eldest son quickly dragged his wife to the side. Upon closer inspection, he saw that there was a row of tooth marks on her ankle, and blood was oozing out. And it was black blood. What kind of toxin was that? Seeing that his friend had been killed, the other man spat at the Gao family. I'm going to infect you. Caught off guard, the women of the Gao family were spat all over their faces. Gao Mingquan had been chasing the man, but because of his injury, it wasn't easy to catch up with him. Moreover, this person had some martial art skills, which made it even harder for Gao Mingquan to hit him. Gao Mingquan shouted at his brothers, "What are you waiting for? Standing around won't stop him. Fight him if you want to protect your wives and children." The Gao brothers were indeed very timid and didn't dare to go near the infected person. However, Gao Mingquan was right. If they didn't join the battle, none of their wives or children would be safe. Hence, all four sons joined hands and finally defeated the man. However, my face, my hand. Does he really have the plague? What are we going to do? Mom, is the plague really that bad? The others asked old Mrs. Gao, the oldest of them all. Old Mrs. Gao had been through a lot. She had heard about the plague before. Chapter 3777, Contagious, 2. Old Mrs. Gao's face was ghastly pale. She didn't want to believe it. That's impossible. How can they have the plague? That's impossible. That's not true. She shook her head. But, Mom, Gao Mingquan wanted to say something, but the old lady cut him. No one is allowed to talk about it. And you... She glared at Gao Mingquan. Don't tell Mingjiang anything after we find him. Gao Mingquan said, Mom, if that's the case, we won't be able to find brother Mingjiang. You. Old Mrs. Gao hit him with her stick. But Gao Mingquan remained unperturbed. Mother, if that's the case, I won't take you to him. The old lady knew that if Gao Mingquan didn't show them the way, they would never be able to find Gao Mingjiang. Are you going to watch your brothers die? The old lady was so angry that she was almost in tears. Gao Mingquan looked from the sorry state of the Gao family to the old lady without saying a word. The old lady told Gao Mingquan to lead the way, but he shook his head and refused. The old lady was furious. The eldest son glared at Gao Mingquan. We don't have to go, but you need to talk to Mingjiang. If he agrees to take us in, I'll listen to him for the rest of my life. The other two sons also looked solemnly at Gao Mingquan, indicating that they would do the same. Gao Mingquan frowned. It's very likely that we've been infected. If we get in touch with brother Mingjiang now, we may infect him and his family. So, I'm not going. Old Mrs. Gao had no choice but to compromise. Go ask him on your own. If he wants to come, that's all the better. If he doesn't want to come, we'll leave him to his fate. Gao Mingquan looked at the others. There was hope, sadness, and regret in their eyes. Right now, they were probably all regretting parting with Gao Mingjiang's family. If they didn't go through this, they would never repent. At that thought, Gao Mingquan rose to its feet. All right, I'll go find my brother. You guys wait for us in the valley. As for these two people, set them on fire before. It was very likely that they had contracted the plague. The eldest son nodded. Off you go. We'll do it. Gao Mingquan quickly left. Old Mrs. Gao looked at her eldest son, dropping hints. Boss Gao smiled bitterly. Mom, it won't make any difference even if we follow Mingquan. If Mingjiang really doesn't want to come, what can we do? Old Mrs. Gao burst into tears and was filled with despair. As a matter of fact, she knew better than anyone else that those two people had to have the plague. When she was little, there was a plague in the village once, and more than 70% of the population died. Why are we so unlucky, old Mrs.? Gao burst into tears. The third daughter-in-law said, "If we hadn't chased them away, we wouldn't have been reduced to this state." The second daughter-in-law said, "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have tried to take advantage of them. I thought we were all family, so what if he lost a little? He was forced to leave. It's all my fault." Chapter 3778, Found Him, 1. Because Gao Mingkuan already knew where his brother was, and they weren't too far apart, he soon found the latter. Brother Mingjiang. Standing some distance away, Gao Mingkuan looked up and shouted at a cabin. The family had been building a cabin when he last saw Gao Mingkuan. It was finished and was buried in the thick growth of leaves. Neither the sun nor the rain could touch it, and it was indeed very comfortable. Feng Wu knew that Gao Mingkuan was here when she heard his footsteps, but she didn't move. Right now, she was recuperating, for she knew that the journey to the northern Yan kingdom would only get more dangerous. Hearing his brother's voice, Gao Mingjiang jumped off the treehouse. "Mingkuan!" Gao Mingjiang sounded both excited and anxious. After all, they were family, and Gao Mingjiang had no intention of abandoning them. He had done that because he wanted the old lady and the others to know how difficult it was to survive on their own so that they wouldn't make trouble for him in the future. It had been a few days, and he wondered how they were doing. Gao Mingkuan didn't go any closer but stood some distance away. Gao Mingjiang ran as fast as he could, but Gao Mingkuan waved him off. "Brother, stay away from me." "Mingkuan, what's wrong? What happened?" Gao Mingjiang panicked when he saw his younger brother, who was covered in wounds, had a bruised face, and was limping. "Stay away from me. I may have caught the plague." Seeing that Gao Mingjiang was coming, Gao Mingkuan stumbled back. "The plague?" Gao Mingjiang frowned and asked anxiously, "What's going on? Is the situation out there so bad already?" Gao Mingkuan didn't waste any time. He quickly told his brother what happened. Li and her children stood by Gao Mingjiang's side and were dumbfounded. "Someone has taken the carriages? And all the food? And the luggage too? How did that happen?" Gao Mingjiang and Li looked at each other in bewilderment. When they heard that the others were fighting over the dead rat, Gao Mingjiang's family was in tears. "It was all my fault. I shouldn't have. I shouldn't have." Gao Mingjiang's eyes were filled with tears. Li took Gao Mingjiang's arm. "No, it's all my fault. I was narrow-minded. That's what I..." Seeing that Gao Mingjiang and his wife were blaming themselves, Gao Mingkuan said bitterly, "Brother, that's what we're facing now. What do you think we should do?" Gao Mingjiang said, "I'll go with you." Li said, "I'll go with you too." But Gao Mingjiang shook his head and said affirmatively, "No, what if you and the kids catch the plague? I can't let that happen." Li looked at Gao Mingjiang with teary eyes. "But if you're killed, how am I supposed to live?" Gao Mingjiang tried to appease her. "What if it's not the plague? Don't worry. Even if it is, I'm healthy enough to pull through. My mom has given you and the kids a hard time, and you're too weak to survive it." He was going to follow Gao Mingkuan after that. Just then Feng Wu sighed. "It's a mess out there. Why don't we let them come here?" Chapter 3779, Found Him, 2. As for whether or not it was the plague, Feng Wu could tell right away. Only then did Gao Mingjiang remember that he had a genius doctor with him. Gao Mingjiang finally knew how capable the girl was. But Gao Mingkuan didn't know that, so he frowned. What if this place is infected? Hearing Feng Wu's words, Gao Mingjiang was relieved. "Great. We'll bring them here." After that, Gao Mingjiang left with his brother. Gao Mingkuan was still worried. After walking for a while, he frowned and asked, "Brother, are we really going to take them back? What if..." Gao Mingjiang waved him off. "Don't worry. With what Feng said, you can rest assured." Gao Mingkuan smiled bitterly. The plague could wipe out an entire city. The plague should have come from Maple Leaf City. Gao Mingkuan looked at Gao Mingjiang in concern. "If Northern Yen knows about it, will they still let us?" Gao Mingjiang was baffled for a moment before he realized the same thing. If Northern Yen knew about this, the city gate would be closed, and no one would be allowed inside. "Let's go." At that thought, Gao Mingjiang quickened his pace. Take my mother and the others to the treehouse. Treat them if they're sick. If they're not, we should be on our way. If we're late, it'll be like you said. We'll be locked out of the city. The two brothers took the carriage, so they moved very fast. It only took them 15 minutes to get there. The Gao family almost lost their minds when they saw the carriage. Old Mrs. Gao, who had been lying down, almost jumped to her feet. It's him. He's here. The Gao family rushed forward in excitement, except for the eldest daughter-in-law, who couldn't move. Gao Mingjiang drove the carriage closer, jumped off, and walked up to the old lady. Mother! Something seemed to occur to old Mrs. Gao, and she stumbled back. Mingjiang, back off. Quickly. You'll catch it. Gao Mingjiang was touched. Before, his mother wouldn't have stayed away from him but forced him to save her brothers. Mum, Xiaowu has told me everything on the way. It's an emergency. Let's go back to the woods first. After that, Gao Mingjiang tried to help her into the carriage. But the old lady still struggled. Does your wife know you're out here like this? Isn't she mad at you? This is such a nice carriage. What if you catch the plague? Only after losing the carriages then did she realize how precious a carriage was. She would rather die than lose it again. Gao Mingjiang smiled bitterly. A carriage isn't as important as a human life. We don't have enough space. If you're too weak to walk, get in. If you can walk, just tag along. We're running out of time. The second and third daughters-in-law looked at each other and both saw guilt in each other's eyes. Mingjiang. As soon as they started talking, Gao Mingjiang waved them off. Guys, we'll talk about it later. His sisters-in-law nodded. Although they didn't say anything, they were very touched. If they were in Gao Mingjiang's place, would they come back to save the others when they knew that they might be infected by the plague? Where's my eldest sister-in-law? Gao Mingjiang realized that someone was missing. Chapter 3780 Rescue. Where's my eldest sister-in-law? Gao Mingjiang realized that someone was missing. The eldest son immediately said, She's here. Your sister-in-law was trying to give someone some food, but that person bit her. She was worried that she might catch the plague, so she wrapped herself up like this. Seeing his sister-in-law bundled up in the carriage, Gao Mingjiang rubbed his forehead. Feng Wu arrived at that moment and was rendered speechless by what she saw. Feng Wu didn't want to attract too much attention, so she checked the eldest daughter-in-law's pulse when she was helping her to her feet. Judging by her pulse, it really was the plague. Feng Wu looked at the crowd. She knew that if she stayed here with them, she could be stopped outside the city wall. However, she knew that she had to save these people. Right at that moment, there was a loud bang in the sky. It was so loud that the mountains and rivers seemed to shake. It was as if an earthquake had taken place. What happened? What happened? Members of the Gao family were shocked. They were bewildered and flustered. They were so exhausted that they couldn't take much more. But now, large chunks of rock rolled down the slope. They were on a gentle slope at the bottom of the hill and would be easily affected. Boom! There was another loud noise, which made them uneasy. Is there an earthquake? Have we run into one? After finally finding Gao Mingjiang, the old lady and the others were still eating porridge. Although they were unsteady on their feet, they still held their bowls so that they wouldn't break them. Gao Mingjiang jumped onto a tree and looked into the distance. Meanwhile, Feng Wu was talking to Little Phoenix. Capable cultivators are fighting. Little Phoenix was pleasantly surprised. I think it's Jun Linyuan. Feng Wu was ecstatic. Jun Linyuan. Was he here? Standing on top of a tree, Feng Wu couldn't see clearly because of the shaking ground. Even so, she could still see two black dots fighting in the distance. At the top of the mountain. That was right. It really was Jun Linyuan. He really was here. However, Feng Wu recalled that a lot of people were after her. There were the Northern Yen Kingdom, the Dongsang Kingdom, and the Tunwo Empire. Feng Wu had no idea why she was in such a miserable state, but it was reality. Who's the one fighting Jun Linyuan? Feng Wu asked. Little Phoenix shook its head. I don't know, but it's a quite capable person. Feng Wu couldn't agree more. Jun Linyuan was already very capable, and even General Xuezhi of the Dongsang Kingdom wasn't his match. The fact that Jun Linyuan was able to fight him to a standstill showed how capable the other person was. Shit! Little Phoenix cried out. Even if Little Phoenix didn't cry out, Feng Wu could still see it. She saw a person flying toward Jun Linyuan's battlefield and joined hands with the first one to fight Jun Linyuan. Feng Wu said, how can they do that? Jun Linyuan was supposed to be on par with the first person, but with the addition of another capable cultivator, Jun Linyuan was in grave danger. Feng Wu narrowed her eyes and clenched her fists. Chapter 3781, Jun Linyuan. Feng Wu narrowed her eyes and clenched her fists. Just then, Gao Mingjiang raised his voice. Feng Wu knew what he said. He told her to come back as soon as possible. But Feng Wu didn't want to. Was right here and he had to be here for her. How could she walk away from him? Right now, Feng Wu regretted the fact that she barely had any cultivation ability left. Even so, Feng Wu still ran toward the top of the mountain. Her action frightened the others. Gao Mingjiang stared at Feng Wu in disbelief. She was gone. Not only wouldn't she back off, but she was also charging forward. Little Feng, come back here. Exasperated, Gao Mingjiang tried to drag Feng Wu back, but Feng Wu was too fast. She ran through the woods like a cheetah and was soon out of sight among the thick leaves. Only then did Li realize what had happened. She rushed over and asked, "Where's Feng?" After interacting with Feng Wu for the past few days, Li genuinely considered Feng Wu to be her niece. She was worried sick when Feng Wu went missing. Gao Mingjiang frowned. She's gone in. Li was so anxious that she burst into tears. But, where's Xiaoshu? Li said anxiously, Xiaoshu is missing. When did he run off? Sonia, where's your brother? Sonia sounded like she was going to cry. He said he was going to fetch some firewood when we heard my grandmother and the others were coming. There was no firewood, so I told him to wait for me. I would go with him after I relieved myself, but he was gone in a moment. Li said, little Feng must have found out that Xiaoshu was missing and went to look for her. My heart. The thought of her two children in danger almost gave her a heart attack. She wanted to run into the woods as fast as she could. You can't go. Gao Mingjiang stopped Li and gave the job to Gao Mingquan. Stop your sister-in-law. After that, Gao Mingjiang was going to rush into the woods to save the two kids. Seeing this, the other three brothers of the Gao family realized that they couldn't let Gao Mingjiang leave. They dropped what they were eating and rushed over to stop him. Mingjiang, don't. Calm down. Calm down? He's my son. Gao Mingjiang threw off his three brothers' hands. The next moment, Gao Mingjiang charged into the woods like an angry bear. Take care of my sister-in-law and the girl. I'll go find my brother. Gao Mingquan dashed off as well. Soon, Gao Mingquan was gone as well. The three brothers looked at one another in bewilderment. Why did it happen so suddenly? The old lady was much calmer. She had a bowl of porridge and a piece of sweet potato. She had recovered a little and could speak again. Cut the crap. Let's get out of here and find a safer spot. Otherwise, we're going to die here. Meanwhile, Feng Wu ran in the direction of the battle after she ran into the woods. Little Phoenix's voice kept ringing in her ears. You're out of your mind. Don't you know how weak you are now? Don't you know what level they are? Compared to them, you're as weak as an ant. How are you going to help anyone? You're going to get yourself killed. But nothing Little Phoenix said could stop Feng Wu. He's here for me, and you want me to abandon him? The more anxious Feng Wu was, the calmer her voice became. Chapter 3782, Battle on the Mountaintop. It was a fierce battle. Right now, Feng Wu couldn't get closer. Gravel kept rolling down the slope, and Feng Wu couldn't even stand still, let alone go up. Fly me there, Feng Wu told Little Phoenix. Little Phoenix frowned and looked troubled. Your current cultivation level? They were still talking when they heard a smirk. Patriarch Zhua? Jun Linyuan's voice rang out. The Zhua family? The patriarch. Feng Wu remembered that the old master of the Zhua family had been killed by Jun Linyuan when he was in the imperial capital. So, was this one the legendary patriarch? The old man removed the cloth covering his face and revealed his face. That's right. The old man stared at Jun Linyuan with an indecipherable look in his eyes. You're not dead. Jun Linyuan frowned and looked confused. The old man smirked. How can I die when the Junwu Empire has a talented young man like you? It was a creepy smile. That old monster isn't dead, is he? Patriarch Zhua smiled at the other man. It was a swordsman. He wore a bamboo hat, straw shoes, and a vine sword basket on his waist. Despite his simple appearance, he was very powerful. The middle-aged swordsman was the one who had fought Jun Linyuan to a draw. Patriarch Zhua glanced at him. Gutsulai, after all these years, you're still dressed like this. Gutsulai glanced at the patriarch with an emotionless face. He pointed his sword at Jun Linyuan. Make your move. Jun Linyuan shook his head. You're not as good as me. Gutsulai was furious, but he still pointed his sword at Jun Linyuan. Strike. He had drawn out his sword, but he hadn't forced Jun Linyuan to draw out his. Patriarch Zhua was on the side, ready to join the battle at any moment. Gutsulai glanced at the old man. Go away. Patriarch Zhua wouldn't have it. But I'll just stand here and watch. I won't interfere. After that, he crossed his arms and leaned back on the wall. But they both knew that the patriarch was only taking advantage of the situation. Gutsulai glanced at Patriarch Zhua and asked Jun Linyuan, shall we have the competition in a month at Norland? Norland was the capital of northern Yen. Jun Linyuan nodded indifferently. Sure. Gutsulai frowned, glanced at the old man and left. He came and went without a trace. Once Gutsulai was gone, Patriarch Zhua looked displeased. It was obvious that Gutsulai didn't want to see him here, so he had left. He had even made an appointment to fight Jun Linyuan at the top of Norland. Jun Linyuan glanced at the old man. Are you going to fight me? Jun Linyuan wouldn't be intimidated if the two of them joined hands, not to mention that there was only one of them left. The old man smirked. Let's fight. Feng Wu heard those last words when Little Phoenix carried her up the mountain. The battle at the top of Norland. Jun Linyuan and Patriarch Zhua were flying away. Feng Wu said, They're gone? Just like that? The ground was covered with broken rocks, withered green plants, and they were disappearing into the distance. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Jun Linyuan was right in front of her, and he was gone before she could say a word to him. She wondered how the battle would turn out. Chapter 3783, Gutsulai. Feng Wu looked eagerly at Little Phoenix. But now, the bird shook its head. No! It knew what Feng Wu meant. She wanted to go to Jun Linyuan, but that couldn't happen. Little Phoenix tried to persuade Feng Wu. All of Jun Linyuan's enemies are spiritual saints, and they can easily crush you. Apart from becoming his burden, there's nothing else you can do. You heard it yourself. The battle of the top of Norland is going to take place a month from now. Jun Linyuan is going to fight Gutsulai. Do you know who Gutsulai is? He's Master Juesha, one of the 4 kings of northern Yen. He's known for his sword, Strike 1. Do you know why his sword is called that name? Because he never makes a second strike. There's also the Zhua family's patriarch and other people hiding in the dark. Even if we can catch up with Jun Linyuan and find him, do you know how much pressure you'll put on Jun Linyuan just by showing up? You have the divine phoenix blood, and Jun Linyuan has the dragon phoenix blood. If the two of you really become a couple, what will it mean? Other forces won't stand by and do nothing. Xiao Wu. And you have to go to Norland because you'll find something you really need there. Little Phoenix finally told the truth. Feng Wu frowned. Is that what Master Linghu was talking about? Little Phoenix nodded. Your master left it for you. You have to have it. Feng Wu nodded. She finally knew why Little Phoenix had led her to the Northern Yen Empire. So, although you didn't say it explicitly, you've been leading me to Norland, haven't you? Feng Wu glanced at the bird. Ahem. Little Phoenix pretended that it didn't understand and looked away. Feng Wu said grumpily, I knew it. You've recovered a lot of your memories from your previous life, but you wouldn't tell me. Little Phoenix sounded anxious. It's not that I don't want to tell you, but I can't. Feng Wu asked, why not? Little Phoenix stomped its foot. Well, I just can't tell you. Seeing that Little Phoenix was worried sick, Feng Wu let it go. So, it really couldn't tell Feng Wu, could it? Would it harm its own life if it did? Feng Wu gave Little Phoenix an excuse. I won't ask you, but you have to tell me everything in advance, Feng Wu warned the bird. Little Phoenix nodded immediately. Feng Wu mumbled, you're right. If I show up in front of Jun Linyuan now, I'll attract a lot of powerful enemies, and most of the capable cultivators of the Junwo Empire are fighting the Dongsang Kingdom. They won't have time to help us. Isn't the competition in a month? Let's go to see Jun Linyuan then. Moreover, she didn't know if Guai Tsulai would try anything funny, so Feng Wu decided to check up on him in advance. At that thought, Feng Wu was filled with enthusiasm. She told Little Phoenix, let's go to the Gao family. Little Phoenix looked at Feng Wu in bewilderment. Aren't you going alone? She looked up at the sky and saw that people were monitoring the ground every now and then. She could sense a pair of eyes staring at this area. It was as if they could see everything. Chapter 3784. Let's go back, 1. Let's go. Feng Wu patted Little Phoenix. Only then did Little Phoenix let out a breath of relief. If Feng Wu insisted on going to Jun Linyuan, there was nothing it could do. Little Feng. Feng Wu and Little Phoenix quickly went down the mountain to find a boy crying on the ground. His face was covered with dirt, and Feng Wu almost couldn't recognize him. It was none other than Gao Xiaoshu, the son of Gao Mingjiang. Xiaoshu, what are you doing here? Feng Wu went up to him in a hurry, crouched down, and rubbed his head. It was obvious that the kid was frightened by what had happened. A stone had smashed into his head, creating a bloody gash. Feng Wu wanted to pick him up but realized that one of his legs was pinned down by a stone. Feng Wu pushed the stone away and examined his right leg. His right leg was badly injured, but luckily she had discovered him in time. Otherwise, Feng Wu was worried that he would lose his leg. Sister, the boy looked excited. He buried his head in Feng Wu's arms and cried even harder. Feng Wu picked him up and asked, why are you here all by yourself? Where are your parents? Gao Xiaoshu was too busy crying and hiccuping to speak. Before Feng Wu could ask another question, she saw two people a short distance away. One was Gao Mingjiang, and the other was Gao Mingkuan. With weapons in their hands and serious looks on their faces, they looked as if they weren't afraid of death at all. Rocks kept falling down as they wandered in the woods, and it was very dangerous. Uncle Gao? Feng Wu greeted him. Gao Mingjiang had lost all hope. Gao Xiaoshu had been lost in the woods, and Feng had rushed in to save him. No one knew if they were still alive. Judging by how dangerous the woods were, they probably weren't going to make it. Gao Mingjiang was getting more and more desperate when he heard a pleasant voice. He froze on the spot and didn't dare to move, fearing that he was hallucinating. Gao Mingkuan nudged him in excitement. Brother Mingkuan, it's them. Only then did Gao Mingjiang turn around, look at Feng Wu, and see the boy in her arms. Xiaoshu. Gao Mingjiang was so excited that he almost passed out. He charged at Feng Wu like a shooting arrow. Gu. Seeing that Gao Mingjiang was so excited that his lips were trembling, Feng Wu knew that he was losing control. She stuffed Gao Xiaoshu into his arms. Xiaoshu's foot was caught by a rock, and he needs immediate treatment. It's too dangerous here. Let's get out first. Sure. Gao Mingjiang nodded at Feng Wu in excitement. Little Feng, I can't thank you enough. If you need my help in the future, I'll do anything. Feng Wu nodded. Let's go out first. On her way out, Feng Wu grabbed a few herbs. When they arrived at the campsite, they saw that they were confronting a group of people. The bandits that had taken their carriages were standing right in front of them. The leader of the bandits was Ding, and he was heading for northern Yen with over a dozen men. They had been traveling from the south to the north to run away from the plague. Captain Ding and the others knew that they would only survive if they went to northern Yen. They had used up a lot of things on their way here, but now... Chapter 3785. Let's go back to. Just when they were running out of provisions, they saw someone they knew. The Gao family. They had a carriage with them. Not only was there a carriage, but there was also a lot of food. There was even meat. Ding and the others were thrilled. Move everything into our carriage. Mo Ping, Ding's most trusted subordinate, stepped out before Ding could say anything. The Gao family was furious. Gao Mingjiang imused some martial arts, but he wasn't here. The remaining 3 sons were as weak as before. Seeing how scared the eldest son was, Mo Ping smirked. What? Are you going to fight back now? Come and take these carriages. They used to belong to your family, don't they? Those around him laughed after Mo Ping said that. The Gao brothers felt like they had been slapped. Infuriated, old Mrs. Gao couldn't take it anymore. She picked up the wok and slapped Mo Ping with it. With a thump, the old lady hit Mo Ping in the face. You old hag! How dare you! Mo Ping kicked the old lady away. Mom! Mom! Seeing that the old lady had closed her eyes, the others were worried sick. Just then, Mo Ping and the others started taking the food. With Feng Wu's help, Gao Mingjiang's family accumulated quite a lot of food. Not only are there steamed buns, but there's also dried meat. Guys, you're going to be in for a treat. Ding gave Mo Ping an appreciative look. Because of Mo Ping's sharp eyes, he immediately spotted the food hidden behind the rocks. Mo Ping's eyesight was unbelievable. Not only did he see food, but he also saw Li. Li's clothes were shabby as well, but she was pretty enough to catch Mo Ping's eye right away. Mo Ping glanced at Ding. Ding rubbed his chin. Mo Ping lowered his voice. Boss, she's a nice-looking woman. She's like a ripe peach and she's so eye-catching. You can take her to bed at night and let her cook during the day. Ding nodded, liking the idea. Mo Ping stared at Li with his shifty eyes, and Li was terrified. The 3 brothers of the Gao family realized what was going on as well, and they pulled Li behind them. Mo Ping smirked. Do you think you can protect her? He then turned to Li. If you come with us, we won't kill them. If you resist, we'll kill them all. Li was filled with despair. The other members of the Gao family lost all hope as well. If Li was taken away, Gao Mingjiang would go berserk when he came back. Hence, the eldest son glared at Mo Ping and gritted his teeth. You can take the food in the carriage, but not her. Mo Ping smirked. I'm not making a suggestion. We want food, carriages, and her. After that, he tried to drag Li away. The Gao brothers wouldn't let Li go. However, Mo Ping wasn't alone. He had over a dozen capable brothers with him. Right now, they had all gathered around the 3 brothers. Gosh, I didn't know you could be so tough. You were so soft before. Chapter 3786. Suppression 1. The 3 brothers weren't their match. They were bandits, and there were over a dozen of them. If the Gao brothers could defeat them, they wouldn't have lost the 2 carriages. Before long, the Gao brothers were lying on the ground with bruised faces. Didn't I tell you to hand it over as soon as possible? Otherwise, you won't be able to handle the consequences. Why did you have to go through such pain? Mo Ping glanced at the group of people in front of him with a taunting look on his face. He then grabbed Li with an evil smile. Come with us. At that critical moment, Li suddenly slashed down at her throat with a dagger. Gao Mingjiang had given the dagger to her for self-defense. She knew that she would wish she were dead if she went with these people, so she might as well die now. She moved so fast that Mo Ping didn't have time to react. Before he realized it, the dagger had cut Li's neck. How dare you! Mo Ping grabbed Li's arm and broke it. Because Li had no experience when she tried to take her own life, she missed the artery when she cut her neck. At that critical moment, whoosh! An arrow flew out. It pierced Mo Ping's heart. Everyone was astonished and turned to look behind Li. Feng Wu had a bow in her hand and a cold look in her eyes. It was obvious that she was the one who had shot Mo Ping. You! Ding was so shocked that he couldn't utter a word. By then, Feng Wu had drawn her bow again. This time, her target was Ding. Feng Wu knew that if she could kill Ding, the team would collapse. Someone in the sky glanced in their direction. Because it was a battle between ordinary people with no spiritual essence, the eyes didn't pay much attention to it. Little Phoenix was relieved and told Feng Wu, "He's gone." Feng Wu nodded slightly. It seemed that she had made the right choice by blending into the crowd. Otherwise, she would have been spotted very easily. Whoosh! The arrow flew through the air and aimed at Ding's face. Ding tried to dodge, but for some unknown reason he couldn't move a muscle. Whoosh! The arrow was buried in Ding's heart. Oh God! Everyone was dumbfounded. Old Mrs. Gao stared at Feng Wu in astonishment. All she knew was that the little beggar was lucky, but she didn't know that she could shoot so well. The other members of the Gao family were astonished as well. Let's go! Gao Mingjiang took out an axe from behind his back and struck down all the enemies. Gao Mingjiang had practiced martial arts before. When he saw that the Gao family was almost destroyed and that his wife had been humiliated, he was furious. He charged at the bandits with an axe in his hand. Naturally, the bandits wouldn't wait for Gao Mingjiang to kill them. They tried to fight back. But Feng Wu was there to help. Whoosh! Arrows just kept coming. Seeing that Feng Wu didn't have enough arrows, old Mrs. Gao rushed over and began to pull the arrows out of Ding's body. Blood gushed out. Chapter 3787, Suppression, 2. On any other day, old Mrs. Gao would have been scared out of her wits. However, she couldn't care less now. Seeing this, the wives of the second and third sons rushed over to pull out the arrows as well. Feng Wu was so accurate that she could kill an enemy with each arrow she shot. Right now, she was running out of arrows. As expected, when Feng Wu reached into the quiver on her back again, she found nothing. Over here. Holding the 3 arrows, old Mrs. Gao stumbled toward her. Poor old Mrs. Gao. She was still dizzy from Mo Ping's kick. She handed the arrows to Feng Wu and asked, "Will they work?" Seeing that the old Mrs. Gao was stumbling around, Feng Wu nodded solemnly. "Yes." Good, old Mrs. Gao's voice was trembling. It was both from the pain and how nervous she felt. By then, Feng Wu had picked up the bloody arrows and went on shooting. Ding's men weren't stupid. They panicked when they saw that over a dozen of their men had been killed. "It's you!" Wang Yu stared at Feng Wu. 7 of the 10 dead bandits had been shot in the chest, 3 had been killed by Gao Mingjiang, and 7 were still alive. 3 of you hold this man down. The rest, come with me and kill her. Wang Yu pointed at Feng Wu. "We can still win if we kill that archer. Otherwise, she'll kill us all." The others saw it as well and all nodded. The next moment, they all charged at Feng Wu. Gao Mingkuan rushed over, tripped Wang Yu, and beat him up on the ground. The other 3 couldn't care less about Wang Yu and kept running. Feng Wu kept shooting as she fell back. Another person fell to the ground. However, the 2 men were only 10 meters away from her. Their faces twisted. Once that person was dead, the rest of the team would be defenseless. Hence, she had to die. Little Phoenix, who was in Feng Wu's arms, said in resignation, "Tell me about it. What kind of battle is this? They're all rolling around on the ground and beating each other up. A battle between ordinary people is so boring." Not only couldn't Feng Wu use her spiritual essence, but the bird also couldn't use it either. As soon as Little Phoenix flapped its wings, these people would be blown away. Feng Wu lowered her voice. "Don't do anything." Little Phoenix mumbled, "I know. There's a pair of eyes watching this land. I won't do anything." Well, look, they just think you're too weak to fight in close combat and want to kill you. As a matter of fact, although Feng Wu had lost her spiritual essence, she was still physically strong enough to defeat an ordinary man with a single punch. By then, the two of them had reached Feng Wu. Kill her. Both men grinned maliciously. Just then, two people rushed over and held the two criminals in their arms. They were none other than the second and third sons of the Gao family. Feng, do something. The third son bellowed. Infuriated, the bandit tried to stab the third son in the back. Feng Wu frowned a little. She grabbed the bandit's saber and slit his throat. The bandit couldn't believe his eyes when he hit the ground. Chapter 3788, Treatment 1. All the bandits were taken care of. Seeing this, old Mrs. Gao let out a breath of relief and almost fainted. All the members of the Gao family were injured or sick, and they looked miserable. The three eldest sons were all injured. The eldest daughter-in-law's condition was unclear. Gao Mingjiang was fine, but Li was still bleeding from the cut on her neck. Gao Mingkuan was covered with wounds, and so was old Mrs. Ge. The group of people consisted of the elderly and the sick. Feng Wu rubbed her forehead. Little Feng, Gao Mingjiang gave Feng Wu a pleading look. Feng Wu looked over her shoulder and saw that the battle was over, and the rocks had stopped falling. She told Gao Mingjiang, "The slope is sheltered from the wind. Let's go there and treat your wounds. I'm going into the woods." Gao Mingjiang nodded immediately. Luckily, the bandits had left carriages behind, so Gao Mingjiang could take them there. As for where they were, it was too open for them to stay. That Feng girl is amazing. After Feng Wu left, the Gao family began to discuss among themselves. The third daughter-in-law said in disbelief, "Did you see her using the bow? She's amazing. She killed a person with each arrow." The second daughter-in-law was still in shock. She had offended Feng Wu before. If the girl went berserk, no one in the Gao family would be her match. But what's she doing in the woods all by herself? Why hasn't she come back? Has she run away because of how burdened we are? The second daughter-in-law shook her head at the third daughter-in-law. That's not what she's like. The third daughter-in-law said, "Why not?" The second daughter-in-law said, "If that's the case, she wouldn't have helped us. She would have left. With her capability, she can go anywhere she wants. Speaking of which, we've benefited a lot from her." The third daughter-in-law wanted to retort, but when she recalled the way the girl shot the arrows, she realized that Feng Wu was indeed a good hunter. "But we're all injured. What are we going to do?" Even the men of the Gao family wanted to cry, let alone the women. Gao Mingjiang said, "We'll cook first, then treat the minor injuries. As for the more severe ones, we'll have to wait until Feng gets back." The other four sons all had superficial wounds, and Gao Mingjiang had brought some ointment with him, and it came in handy this time. Old Mrs. Gao was sitting there with her hands on her stomach and crying out in pain. Sweat covered her forehead. "Mom, how do you feel?" The old lady waved her off. She now saw that out of all her sons, only the fourth was useful. She drew in her breath in pain and told Gao Mingjiang, "We'll set out as soon as Feng comes back." Gao Mingjiang said, "But I can't say for sure, but a lot of people behind us have caught the plague and are heading for northern Yen now. We have to leave before the city is sealed." Only then did Gao Mingjiang remember that. "My eldest sister-in-law is old." Mrs. Gao looked at Xiao for a while before shaking her head. "I don't know. We'll have to let her stay behind." Gao Mingjiang said, "Mom." "Old Mrs. Gao said coldly, "Of course, we have to take care of healthy people first. If I'm the one infected, I'm going to stay behind as well. Those who are in good health, go to northern Yen now." Chapter 3789, Treatment 2. At that point, she coughed violently. "Mother, phew," Gao Mingjiang cried out. Old Mrs. Gao blanched. Was she really infected? If that was the case. Instantly, everyone in the Gao family froze on the spot with grim looks on their faces. Feng Wu came back at that moment. She came back with a broken pot she had found somewhere, and it was steaming. Little Feng, you're finally back. Gao Mingjiang let out a breath of relief when he saw Feng Wu. What's this? Feng Wu said, I picked some herbs. Since I had nothing better to do, I took some medicine. After that, Feng Wu poured the gravy into some boiled water, stirred it a little, and told Gao Mingjiang, give everyone a bowl each. This medicine? Feng Wu looked at him in bewilderment. Didn't I tell you before? It specializes in treating the rat plague. It can treat the sick and prevent infection if there's nothing wrong. Gao Mingjiang was worried about the plague, but Feng Wu told him that it was solved. But the other members of the Gao family didn't believe her. The plague was going to kill them, and there was no such thing as a special potion. They would never believe what Feng Wu said. Feng Wu knew that this wasn't the time to reason with them, so she frowned at Gao Mingjiang. Gao Mingjiang and his family knew how capable Feng Wu was, so they nodded and distributed the medicine. As a matter of fact, Feng Wu didn't gather the ingredients just now. They couldn't be found here. It was a potion that Feng Wu made beforehand, and she was only mixing them in the hot water now. As for whether or not it could treat the plague, of course it could. At Feng Wu's level, the plague was nothing. After everyone drank a big bowl of medicine, Feng Wu suggested that they should set out. Gao Mingjiang agreed. The sooner they reached Ju City, the better. Old Mrs. Gao was already having a fever, so she went to talk to Feng Wu. Leave me and my eldest daughter-in-law behind. Feng Wu looked at her in bewilderment. Old Mrs. Gao rolled her eyes at Feng Wu. I know. You're the only one who can make decisions. That's why I'm here. Leave me and my daughter-in-law behind. Feng Wu asked, why? Old Mrs. Gao said, we're both running a fever. It's obviously a symptom of the plague. We're going to die, but you're still all right. We can't spread it to you or the people of Northern Yen. Feng Wu gave her a strange look. Since when was the old lady so selfless? Old Mrs. Gao snorted. They're all my children, so of course I care about them. I've had enough. Just let them live. You guys can leave now. Feng Wu chuckled. So, you know that you can't spread the plague to Northern Yen. Old Mrs. Gao snorted. All I know is that if we spread the plague to Northern Yen, even if we can get in, we'll be decapitated later. So, I'm going to wait here to die. Feng Wu waved her off. Don't worry. It'll be all right. After that, she grabbed the old lady and dragged her into the carriage. Old Mrs. Gao was exasperated. Are you an idiot? Why did you do that? Feng Wu chuckled. I told you already. You'll be all right after drinking my medicine. Chapter 3790. They're here, 1. As expected, after drinking the potion Feng Wu gave her, the eldest daughter-in-law, who had been running a high fever, gradually recovered. Feng Wu chuckled. I told you already. My medicine is amazing. Unfortunately, no one believed her. How could there be such an amazing potion that could cure the plague? If there really was one, the empire wouldn't have to worry about the plague so much. Everyone thought that Feng Wu was only joking, except for Gao Mingjiang, who looked at Feng Wu in amazement. He felt that his sister-in-law's symptoms were very similar to the plague. So, Feng's medicine worked, didn't it? Little Phoenix was complaining in Feng Wu's head. You're so... They won't believe you after hearing what she said. No one will believe that you can treat the plague, nor will they thank you for it. Feng Wu chuckled. I don't need them to give me any credit. Little Phoenix said, then you... Feng Wu went on laughing. I didn't want them to know that I was the one who had saved them. That way, I would be able to blend into the crowd and join the team. Otherwise, I would be too outstanding. Little Phoenix agreed with her. Little Phoenix said, there are more patients coming. Are you going to save them or not? Feng Wu shrugged. We're in the middle of nowhere, and there's nothing we can do. Even if we have a prescription, we won't know where to start. We'll have to wait until we're in Northern Yen. I'll then give them the prescription. As they spoke, they were getting closer and closer to Northern Yen. Gao Mingjiang came to tell Feng Wu, We'll reach the border city in 2 days. Feng Wu nodded. They had been traveling as fast as they could. Occasionally, they would run into someone who had caught a fever, but it was getting rarer and rarer. Gao Mingjiang was elated when he saw they no longer run into people with symptoms. As long as they got there before those people did, they should still be able to get into the border city. Shall we travel through the night or? Gao Mingjiang asked for Feng Wu's opinion. Feng Wu looked over her shoulder and saw that they had been traveling for 3 to 4 days and were exhausted. She waved at them. Let's take a break for 4 hours. We still have some time. Gao Mingjiang thought the same, so he nodded and went to make the arrangement. The Gao family used to be very disobedient and would do whatever they wanted, but after Gao Mingjiang demonstrated what would happen when he was away, they realized that they couldn't survive without him. As a result, they didn't bully his family anymore, nor did they exploit Gao Mingjiang because he was their brother. They were all very obedient. Therefore, Gao Mingjiang handled things much more easily. Gao Mingjiang round a spot to let Tnem settle down. It just so happened that there were a lot of rocks here, so they chose a leeward spot where they could easily start a fire. Everyone had been eating dry food and drinking cold water for the past few days, and they had been feeling dizzy the whole time. As soon as they got off the carriages, old Mrs. Gao's legs gave out, and she almost fell. Feng Wu was the first to react. She picked her up and steadied the old lady. Feng Wu looked around. They were in a forest which was very close to northern Yen. It wasn't dry like the one in the south. Feng Wu took out her bow and arrow and said to Gao Mingjiang, "I'm going to take a look in the woods." "Be careful," said Gao Mingjiang. Chapter 3791. They're here, too. They weren't worried about Feng Wu, for she had demonstrated how good a hunter she was. To Feng Wu, hunting wasn't a problem at all. She could even hunt large beasts. With Little Phoenix around, she wouldn't have any problem at all. However, she only managed to kill 2 rabbits in the end. She couldn't let her spiritual essence fluctuate or make a scene. Luckily, northern Yen was already very close. Once they were in northern Yen, she would be like a fish swimming in the sea. It would be very difficult for them to catch up with her. At that thought, Feng Wu smiled a little. Once they were out of the woods, Feng Wu saw that the others had started a fire, and the water was bubbling. She handed one rabbit to Li and the other to Gao Mingjiang. While Li stewed the fat rabbit with vegetables, Gao Mingjiang roasted the rabbit. Little Phoenix was anxious for Feng Wu. "We're almost there. I'm sure there will be an inspection." Feng Wu said, "I've been hanging out with the Gao family for so long, and I've been waiting for this inspection. Don't worry. I have a plan." Little Phoenix mumbled, "We've been trying to keep a low profile this whole time, and I'm so bored. This place is so uncivilized. I can't believe that I've lived like this for so long." Feng Wu chuckled. "When you were with my beautiful master, you were so high up in the air that you didn't know what the real world was like. This is a great opportunity for you to experience the real world. Maybe you'll learn something." Feng Wu then saw the look on Little Phoenix's face change. "What?" Feng Wu looked at Little Phoenix in bewilderment. Little Phoenix was giving Feng Wu a strange look. Feng Wu asked, "What's wrong?" Little Phoenix said, "You're right." Feng Wu said, "Are you going to?" Little Phoenix nodded. "That's right. I didn't think much of this trip at first and even felt aggrieved, but with your guidance just then, I think I've really learned something incredible. No, I have to do it now. Protect yourself." After that, Little Phoenix entered the ring space through Feng Wu's sleeve and went into seclusion. It had a feeling that it was going to have an epiphany. It would be very impressive when it came out. Feng Wu was astonished as well. Little Phoenix had an epiphany just like that and was going to make a breakthrough. Feng Wu cleared her throat. That was good news, wasn't it? However, Feng Wu was glad to hear that. After all, Little Phoenix was as capable as she was. If Little Phoenix had learned something, so did she, and it would only make her more enlightened. Feng Wu recalled what Master Ling Hu said earlier. Travel the world and comprehend it. What was it that he wanted her to comprehend? What would she get after she found Master Hu Yen? Somehow, Feng Wu was looking forward to this trip. Just then they heard the sound of hooves. Although Feng Wu had lost her cultivation ability, she still had a sharp hearing. She could hear the sound of hooves. There was more than one horse. There had to be 3. As expected, 3 horses soon arrived. Feng Wu frowned when she recognized the 3 horses. Weren't they Princess Rao's maids? These people were known for their wanton killing. Chapter 3792, The Maids. They arrived as fast as they could in their scarlet capes. Feng Wu wasn't the only one who had noticed it. Everyone else had their eyes on them. Gao Mingjiang's stomach lurched, and he told the others in a hurry, "Quickly, move to the side. Don't disturb the noble ladies." The others also recognized the 3 horses. Back at the checkpoint, if they hadn't run away in time, they would have been killed by now. The others didn't dare to look at them and only pretended to be busy, hoping that they would leave as soon as possible. Things didn't go as planned. They wanted these 3 people to leave, but the latter suddenly stopped. The girl named Saixia was the chief maid working for Princess Rao. She stopped the horse and was the first to jump off. The members of the Gao family felt their stomachs lurch. They all lowered their heads and didn't dare to move. Miss Saixia was satisfied with what she saw. She was used to intimidating other people. She scanned the crowd with her cold eyes. "Who's the leader here?" They all looked at Gao Mingjiang. Gao Mingjiang stepped out. "We're requisitioning this place. Get lost." She was chasing them away. However, the Gao family couldn't reason with these bossy nobles anymore. Gao Mingjiang nodded. All right, we're leaving now." Gao Mingjiang gave his friends a warning look, telling them to put the things in the carriage and leave. "However, I said requisition. Do you not understand?" Another girl behind Saixia asked in a cold voice. Gao Mingjiang said, "What? I've requisitioned everything. Just get lost." The girl in the blue dress looked like she was going to lose her temper at any moment. Gao Mingjiang said, "But we can't live without them." "Well, that's interesting. How dare a commoner try to bargain with us?" The girl in the blue dress clicked her tongue and glanced at Gao Mingjiang contemptuously. "It's your honor that we even want to use your things. Now get lost." Just then, the third girl said, "Sister Saixia, Sister Xylan, we need someone to take care of our horses and our food. It's not appropriate to chase them all away. How about we leave someone behind to look after us?" Saixia agreed. She glanced at the crowd and frowned. These people were so filthy. They looked like beggars. "It's your call." Saixia left it to Muley, while she sat down on a warm rock and began to cultivate. Muley looked around and pointed at Feng Wu. "You stay here and serve us. The rest of you—" Seeing the frightened looks on their faces, Muley said grumpily, "Do you really think we'll take your trash? When you come back in a few hours, you can have everything back." Fearing that Feng Wu would be bullied if she stayed, Li said in a hurry, "My girl is a little clumsy. How about I take her place?" Muley glanced at Li and said, "You two stay here, then." Seeing that Gao Mingjiang still wanted to say something, Muley noticed the impatient look on Saixia's face, so she frowned at Gao Mingjiang. "Leave now. If you offend Sister Saixia, you'll all be killed." Chapter 3793, Primary Heaven Pill. Muley impatiently chased the others away. Gao Mingjiang darted a concerned look at Feng Wu, but Feng Wu only waved at him, telling him that she would take care of it. In the end, Gao Mingjiang had no choice but to lead the team away. They didn't go very far but stopped a few hundred meters away where they could stay out of the wind. Meanwhile, Kai Xia and the others had gathered around. Seeing that Feng Wu and Li had nothing better to do, Muley frowned. "We don't have enough firewood here, nor do we have enough food. You two do your job. If you offend Sister Saixia, I'll cut your heads off." Fearing that Feng Wu would be displeased, Li tugged at her sleeve to calm her down. Feng Wu shook her head at Li, indicating that she wasn't mad. She was trying to come up with a plan. Feng Wu pretended to be busy with the chopping board, but she kept her ears open, for the 3 of them were eating rabbits around a campfire while sipping the steaming hot soup in the pot. Muley was the first to speak. Sister Tsaixia, we've been running for thousands of miles, but we still haven't seen her. Do you think she's not here? Tsaixia frowned but didn't say anything. Xylin, on the other hand, shook her head. That won't happen. According to our princess's divination, that person will definitely come to Northern Yen, and it'll be in the near future. Feng Wu's stomach lurched. A divination? That Princess Rao knew how to do that? Was she so sure that Feng Wu would come to Northern Yen? Putting Master Ling Hu's words together with Princess Rao's action, Feng Wu felt that a big secret she didn't know was slowly unfolding. Muley went on. The 13 paths that lead into Northern Yen have all been blocked, and Her Royal Highness's secret guards are all scattered around. But we haven't heard from her yet. How strange. Xylin said, I've been wondering, how did Miss Feng Wu offend our princess? By the sound of it, our princess wants to kill her at all cost. Muley shook her head. I heard that the assassins of the guillotine were involved as well. That's right. Xylin turned to Tsaixia. Sister Tsaixia, you're the princess's favorite. Do you know why that is? Tsaixia didn't reply. Xylin was still curious. I've been with the princess for so long, but I've never seen her so determined to kill a person. I heard that Feng Wu is just a girl, and we've put in so much effort. Tsaixia looked at her 2 deputies and shook her head. That's because you don't know. So, Sister Tsaixia, you know the answer, don't you? Just tell us. What's going on? The 2 girls cajoled Tsaixia. In the end, Tsaixia had no choice but to say, if I tell you, you'll have to keep it a secret. Yes. The other 2 nodded repeatedly. Tsaixia said, I don't know much, but I have some leads. Have you heard of the primary heaven pill? Both girls shook their heads. Tsaixia said, it's only natural that you don't know because there's probably only one such pill left in this world. She smiled bitterly. Let's put it this way. There are 10 levels in total in the physical enhancement of one's body, but if one takes this pill, what will happen then? The 2 girls asked in unison. Feng Wu pricked up her ears as well. Chapter 3794, Level 8. Feng Wu pricked up her ears as well. The primary heaven pill? She had never heard of it before. Feng Wu wanted to ask Little Phoenix in her head, but she suddenly realized that Little Phoenix had had an epiphany along the way and had gone to cultivate and make a breakthrough. Hence, Feng Wu pricked up her ears and listened to them. Just then, Tsaixia, the chief maid, snorted at Feng Wu. Why isn't there any hot water? Bring us some hot water. Xylin scolded Feng Wu. One moment. Fearing that they might get angry, Li fetched some hot water in a hurry. She was so nervous that she almost spilled it. I'll do it. Feng Wu took the wooden bucket from Li, smiled at her, and handed it to the maids. Muley was still asking curiously, Sister Tsaixia, what will the pill do? It's so difficult for us to train our bodies. Tsaixia snorted. With that pill, if you're lucky, you'll be able to rise directly to Level 8. Level 8. Hearing Tsaixia's words, the other 2 maids cried out with envy. They were so envious that they thought they were going to lose their minds. The 3 of them had all worked so hard in physical enhancement, but they had only reached a few levels. What about the pill? Muley took a deep breath. Don't even think about it. How can you possibly have a share in the pill? There's only one of them in this world. Tsaixia snorted. It belongs to our princess. If there's only one of them in the world, of course, it belongs to our princess. Xylin nodded. She's one of the best cultivators of her generation. Even Zhua Qingwan of the Junwo Empire isn't her match. Muley mumbled, but I heard that the Junwo Empire has a genius girl. She has the divine phoenix blood. What divine phoenix blood? Are you going to believe her just because she says she has the divine phoenix blood? Xylin was very supportive of her princess and couldn't stand the compliments of other people. She smirked and said, if that Feng Wu really is that amazing, why did she stay quiet for so many years and only came out to promote herself when His Royal Highness was getting married? Sister Tsaixia, don't you think Feng Wu is so scheming? Next to her, Feng Wu was speechless. But what Saixia said surprised Xilan. Not really. Saixia frowned. Miss Feng Wu isn't to be underestimated. Why? Xilan was displeased. Saixia said, if she's as useless as you say, why would our princess need secret guards like us to track her down? And after so long, we still haven't found anything. That alone makes me think that she's something. Sister Saixia, you're amazing. Muley nodded. I think so too. Xilan didn't like the sound of that. I don't think she's all that capable. Kaixia smirked. Our princess isn't the only one that's after her. The Zhou family of the Zhenhua Empire, the Hua family, and the Dongsang Kingdom are all looking for her, and they've all sent some very influential people. We haven't heard anything yet. She's done a great job of staying hidden. But, Saixia smirked. If she keeps hiding like this, she won't be able to keep that treasure. Chapter 3795. Don't I tell anyone? What treasure? Everyone turned to look at Saixia. Meanwhile, Saixia lowered her voice. I'm Onulf telling voucher don't tell Anvon. I swear. I won't tell a soul. Otherwise, I'll be struck by lightning. Me too. I won't let anyone else know. They both raised their hands to make an oath. Only then did Saixia nod. That's a secret. I wouldn't have told you if we weren't outside. I heard that the primary heaven pill isn't our princess's yet. Muley frowned. What do you mean by that? Saixia said, the pill belongs to someone else, but it'll be our princess's after a month. Muley's eyes flickered and she asked, someone else? Do you mean Miss Fenghui? Xilan spat on the ground. Bullshit. How can that one-of-a-kind pill be Feng? That's impossible. However, Saixia said indifferently, maybe it really is hers. What? Xilan stared at Saixia in disbelief. Meanwhile, Feng Wu, who had gone back to the chopping board and pretended to be busy, was amazed as well. A primary heaven pill? It was hers. She couldn't believe it. Could it be because of her senior brother Hu Yen? Feng Wu still had a lot of questions, so she listened carefully. However, Li didn't understand a word. She looked utterly confused and was terrified. Xilan said anxiously, how's that possible? What does that pill have anything to do with Feng Wu? How can it be hers? Saixia said, our princess has dropped some hints, so we have to find Feng Wu and kill her. If she gets to the imperial capital safely. If she takes the pill, the princess will be so mad that she'll kill us. Saixia was very serious, and so were the other two. Xilan said, our princess is a very talented cultivator, but she's physically weak, so she needs that pill. The other two nodded in unison. Feng Wu thought to herself, I need it too. If the pill really was hers, she would never give it up. If it wasn't her, she still wouldn't let Princess Rao have it because that woman had been trying to kill her. The two of them. Just then, Xilan made a hand gesture. Saixia frowned and rose to her feet. That's enough. Let's go. She then gave Xilan a warning glance. Xilan nodded. Kai Shao and Muley jumped onto their horses and galloped off, their scarlet capes stirring up the wind in the dark. Xilan glanced at Feng Wu and Li and said indifferently, your service is quite nice. Here's a reward for you. After that, she tossed out 2 silver ingots. She tossed one piece to Li and the other to Feng Wu. Catch it. Xilan gave them a threatening look. Seeing the shiny silver ingot in the night sky, Xilan smiled and nodded. You've done a great job. Come with me. I need to talk to you. Feng Wu had an idea, but Li had no idea what Xilan was going to do next. Feng Wu was alarmed, and a dagger appeared in her sleeve. She and Li followed Xilan through the woods. Chapter 3796. Clean Up the Mess 1. Feng Wu and Li followed Xilan through the woods. Come here. Xilan waved at Li. Despite her fear, Li still forced herself to walk toward Xilan. Xilan glanced at Li and smirked. You have the plague. That. As soon as she said those words, Xilan struck Li's head with a knife. Ah! Li's stomach lurched. Just then, there was a whooshing sound. A dagger cut Xylan's throat. Xylan turned around and looked at the people behind her. Feng Wu stood behind her with an indifferent look on her face and a calm look in her eyes. She was holding a dagger, and blood was trickling down the blade. You? Xylan was dumbfounded. She was supposed to be the one in control and could decide who lived or died, but now. Feng Wu watched as Xylan fell. Little Feng. Frightened, Li grabbed Feng Wu's hand and burst into tears. She was too scared to speak. Had it not been for Feng Wu, she would have been dead by now. Feng Wu patted the back of her hand. I need to take care of this. Otherwise, Feng Wu recalled that there were still a lot of people in the Gao family. Things would have been much easier if she was all by herself. She could run as fast as she wanted into the woods, but what about the Gao family? They weren't just names, but flesh and blood. They had been eating, living, and getting along well with each other. Feng Wu couldn't just stand there and watch them get killed. She told Li, go back to your family now and set out immediately. You have to reach the border city at noon tomorrow. Otherwise, you won't be able to get in. But, Li was at a loss. Feng Wu said calmly, if you panic now, so many people in the Gao family will lose their heads. Are you sure you still want to panic? Li had been panic-stricken at first, but hearing Feng Wu's words, she immediately calmed down as if someone had poured cold water on her head. She knew that Feng was the most capable member of the team, so she listened to the girl. Feng Wu said, you don't have to worry about anything here. Go back to your team and tell them to set out now. As for me, tell them that they've taken me away. Li said, but? Feng Wu said, no buts. If you tell the Gao family about what really happened, do you think they'll be able to handle it and keep it a secret? You heard it yourself. Their princess roused people. Li shook her head anxiously. Her family couldn't take it, and they would have a nervous breakdown. Feng Wu nodded. So, you don't have to tell them what happened here. Just tell them that the 3 people have taken me away. As for what happened here, you don't have to worry about it. And you? Feng Wu smeared something on Li's face. The ointment will fester your face for a while, but it'll recover in time. Don't worry. It's to keep you alive. Li was concerned. What about you? Are you going to turn yourself in? Feng Wu chuckled. Why would I do that? Don't worry. I have my own plan. Don't you know what I'm capable of? After much persuasion, Feng Wu finally persuaded Li to leave. Chapter 3797, Clean Up the Mess Too. However, Li wouldn't be able to withstand such pressure. She wouldn't tell anyone, but she would tell Gao Mingjiang. Feng Wu knew that very well. After Lady Wang went back, Feng Wu stared at Xylan's body. Soon, a fully dressed Xylan showed up. Needless to say, it was Feng Wu. As for Xylan's body, Feng Wu had melted completely with some potion. After taking care of Xylan's body, Feng Wu ran to the horse as fast as she could, jumped onto it, and disappeared out of sight. Before long, she caught up with Caixia on horseback. What took you so long? Did you take care of everything? Muley frowned at her. Feng Wu had observed Xylan's behavior, so she had no problem mimicking her. It's been taken care of. Feng Wu smirked. It didn't take me much effort to kill a commoner. Muley was confused. Then why did it take you so long? Sister Caixia thought something had happened to you. Feng Wu smiled. You'll see when we get back. Muley snorted. You're such a poser. Feng Wu said proudly, I'm not telling you. This was how Xylan usually bickered with Muley. If Feng Wu was too careful now, she might give herself away. Neither Caixia nor Muley realized that their friend had been replaced by Feng Wu. Caixia turned around and gave them a stern look. Quiet. We must hurry up. Muley stuck out her tongue and stopped talking to Feng Wu. Feng Wu was curious. Where were they going? Shouldn't they be going back to the imperial capital? The border city was right ahead of them, but Caixia took them around a corner. Instead of entering the city gate, they headed for a main road nearby. Feng Wu and Muley looked at each other. Why didn't they enter? We're going to see someone. Caixia narrowed her eyes. Before long, they arrived at a mountain peak. Standing by the edge of the cliff, they saw a bottomless pit in the mist. From afar, they could see the mist rising and falling, and the border city was barely visible through it. Saisha didn't get off the horse, so Feng Wu and Muley remained on horseback as well. Looking around, Muley saw that the three of them were alone, so she asked curiously, "Sister Saisha, who are we here to see?" Saisha waved at her to calm her down. Feng Wu narrowed her eyes and pricked up her ears. She heard footsteps coming their way. She was right. A moment later, a figure showed up in front of Saisha. It was obvious that Saisha knew the person. They nodded at each other. Feng Wu noticed that it was a woman. She wore a white dress and had a slender figure. There was a white flower on her sideburns. She was a mourner. Seeing her, Saisha dismounted, walked up to her, and bowed respectfully. "Miss Hua, it's been a while." "Hua." Feng Wu recalled what happened a few days ago. The Hua family and the Zhou family had joined hands and tried to destroy the Feng family, but Feng Wu had planned everything out. In the end, more than half of the masters of the Zhou and Hua families were killed or injured overnight, and the two families were on the verge of collapse. Things weren't so bad for the Hua family, but the Zhou family had collaborated with the Dongsang kingdom, and the evidence was irrefutable. Chapter 3798, Hua Family. But the Zhou family had colluded with the Dongsang kingdom, and the evidence was irrefutable. As a result, the entire Zhou family collapsed. Some of them ran away, but Emperor Wu caught the rest. The Zhou family's house was ransacked, and many members were beheaded. It was a boisterous scene. But the Hua family. Feng Wu remembered that apart from the capable cultivators who had died in the arena, everyone else in the Hua family was still alive. However, after this battle, the Hua family had lost most of its members. Who was this young lady? Saisha and the young woman didn't try to hide their conversation, so Feng Wu heard everything. "Still no news of your princess?" Miss Hua frowned at Saisha. Saisha shook her head. There were several suspicious cases, but it turned out none of them was Feng Wu. She really knows how to mislead people. Miss Hua smirked. "With all the traps we've set up, I don't believe that she can get away. She's probably dead by now." Saisha nodded. "That's possible." Miss Hua stared at Saisha. "If you do find anything on her, remember, her head belongs to the Hua family. As for what your princess wants, we'll hand it over to her on a plate." Saisha said, "Of course." Miss Wu disappeared as quickly as she showed up, and Kai Shao was soon back on her horse. Muley asked curiously, "Is that Miss Hua, our princess's best friend?" Saisha nodded. Muley said, "She seems to hate Feng Wu." Saisha said, "The Hua family is the source of much of our princess's information on Feng Wu. She has made the Hua family miserable, and more than half of the spiritual overlords have been killed. The Hua family will never forgive her for that." Muley said, "Is Feng Wu really that capable?" Saisha frowned. "I hope not." Muley said, "You have a point. What if she takes our princess's pill?" Saisha nodded. Muley said, "Apart from us, the Hua family is looking for her as well. I heard that the Zhou family is also looking everywhere for her. If she's smart enough, she'll have gone into hiding by now. She'll never come back to our capital. She's not stupid." Saisha frowned a little. "She's so different from other people. Even the princess can only divine a fraction of her behavior, and it can only prove that she's still alive. We can't tell where she is. Of course, if she's very close, our princess may be able to divine it right away. She's a great diviner." "You don't say." "She's the smartest person I've ever met. No one can predict the future like her." "We're going to see the princess now." Saisha waved the things in her hands. It was something that Miss Hua had told her to bring to Princess Rao. Feng Wu frowned a little. A prophecy? A divination? Was this Princess Rao really as good as she was said to be? If she was, she should be able to identify the real Feng Wu. It seemed that Feng Wu had to leave the team as soon as possible. That was what Feng Wu thought and what she did. The three of them had no problem getting into the border city, but tents had been set up outside, and they were filled with people from the south. Feng Wu asked around and realized that people from northern Yen couldn't enter the city all at once. Most of them could only make do with a straw hut outside. Chapter 3799, Northern Yen 1. Saisha said, "Go back and get some rest. I'm afraid we'll have to set out again tomorrow." Muley said, "Sure." She then waved at Feng Wu. "Sister Xylan, I'll see you here tomorrow." She dashed off after that. Meanwhile, Saisha was rushing into the imperial palace as fast as she could. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. So, she had been left here. Princess Rao lived in the imperial palace, but because of her influential force, she had a residence outside the imperial city, which was where Feng Wu was now. Feng Wu thought to herself, "Since I'm here, I might as well have a look." Hence, she only walked a short distance before she saw a group of people rushing out. Feng Wu noticed that they were all soldiers, and each one of them was covered in scales and holding a sharp saber. Involuntarily, Feng Wu shifted and hid in the shadows. She heard the leader say, "Where is she? Where is the girl that stood here just then?" How intimidating. Feng Wu frowned a little. She remembered clearly that she had been standing there before, and of course, she wasn't the only one who had been passing by. Just then an old man arrived. "Master Ling, what's the matter?" "Steward Wang, was someone here before?" Master Ling asked in a displeased tone. A yellow fox was circling around the spot where Feng Wu had been standing, wagging its tail. "Here." Steward Wang couldn't make up his mind because he hadn't noticed anything. "I didn't notice any person." "Master Ling, what happened?" Steward Wang didn't look too happy. He had always been in charge of the outer courtyard of the princess's residence, and he didn't like Master Ling's attitude at all. Master Ling cupped his hands at Steward Wang. "I'm not being arrogant, but it's really urgent. Her Royal Highness has come up with a new divination result. The person she's looking for has shown up here before." "What?" Steward Wang's stomach lurched. He had always known that the princess was looking for someone, and a lot of people had been sent out of the manor these days. And he wasn't the only one. Feng Wu felt as if she was going to suffocate. What was this Princess Rao's divination ability? How could she pinpoint the location? She had indeed been there before. Luckily, she wasn't the only one. What Feng Wu didn't know was that Princess Rao had spent a lot of time and effort to locate Feng Wu. However, it was a one-off attempt, and she couldn't afford to use it all the time. It wouldn't be so easy to locate Feng Wu again. Master Ling said, "She might not be here in the residence, but we're going in the right direction. Steward Wang, please take care of what happens next." He then turned to the soldiers behind him. "Search the area within 5 kilometers from the southeast of the princess's residence. No one is to be spared." "Yes." Only then did Feng Wu relax a little. It seemed that the princess had divined a radius of 5 kilometers. But that was already terrifying enough. After all, Feng Wu hadn't recovered her spiritual essence yet and couldn't use it yet. How frustrating. If one had to compare them, Princess Rao was like a giant with a bunch of minions, while Feng Wu. Chapter 3800, Northern Yen 2. If one had to compare them, Princess Rao was a colossus with a lot of foot soldiers, while Feng Wu was all alone. The difference was simply too great. She couldn't confront the princess just yet. Feng Wu rubbed her forehead with a wry smile. She had to find Hu Yin Yanba as soon as possible and get her strength back. That way, she would be able to handle Princess Rao, who wanted her dead. Feng Wu quietly left the princess's residence, making it look like she was leaving the city. After she left the city, she faked a scene of fighting and made it look like Xylan was dead. That way, she could cover her tracks by impersonating Xylan, and the Gao family wouldn't be incriminated. Meanwhile, Feng Wu was walking around the city in her ugly girl form. The capital city of northern Yen was similar to the imperial capital of the Junwa Empire. The streets were all horizontal and vertical. It was spacious and full of people. Just then, Feng Wu heard a voice in her head. I know how to find Hu Yen. It was Little Phoenix. As it spoke, a bird with colorful feathers came out of her sleeve. Feng Wu noticed a tuft of white hair on its head. She poked it in the forehead. That's new. Little Phoenix raised its chin. That's because I'm getting much better. Feng Wu asked curiously, how capable are you now? Little Phoenix gloated. I'm a peak spiritual overlord now. Feng Wu's stomach lurched. Before, Little Phoenix was about her level. Before she lost her ability, she was only a junior spiritual overlord. But now, Little Phoenix had reached the peak of the spiritual overlord stage after an epiphany. That was fast. Feng Wu looked at it in amazement. Little Phoenix looked equally amazed. That's right. That was fast. But it's really strange. Is traveling the world really that amazing? Little Phoenix scratched its head. It didn't know why, but it was always a good thing to make a breakthrough. Feng Wu thought to herself, although I've been chased all the way here, Little Phoenix has made so many breakthroughs already. It's worth it. Little Phoenix said earnestly, you need to get your body back as soon as possible. I have a feeling that you're going to make a great breakthrough as well. Feng Wu nodded. Little Phoenix wasn't the only one who had that feeling. She had it as well. By the way, what did you say? Feng Wu remembered what Little Phoenix said earlier. Only by taking that pill from Little Yanba can you get your cultivation ability back. I know where to find him. Come with me. Little Phoenix stood on Feng Wu's shoulder and showed her the way. Right now, Feng Wu was as ordinary as an ugly girl, and she didn't have any spiritual essence fluctuation, so no one noticed her. Feng Wu followed Little Phoenix's lead and kept walking. She had lost count of how many tunnels and turns she had taken. There. Little Phoenix gloated. I visited Yanba a long time ago. He lives there. Pointing at the woods a short distance away, Little Phoenix said excitedly, let's go. However, as soon as they showed up, a cold shield hit them. Feng Wu stumbled back with a thump and was almost crushed. Sis, she drew in her breath. Chapter 3801, Northern Yen 3. When she looked again, she saw that there was no obstruction. Just then, Feng Wu heard a voice. Hey, are you here to try your luck too? Feng Wu couldn't help but turn around when she heard the voice. A handsome teenager stood in front of her and looked at her in amazement. Try my luck. Feng Wu was confused. That's right. Aren't you here to try your luck and hope that you can break in and meet the Grandmaster? The teenager glanced at Feng Wu, convinced that she was pretending. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. You have a point. Everyone wants to be favored by the Grandmaster, and everyone wants to try their luck. What if they succeed? Don't you think so? The teenager grinned at Feng Wu. Feng Wu chuckled. She still didn't get it. Crossing his hands behind his back, the teenager sighed. I've seen a lot of kids like you. See? Over there is my refinery shop. I can see people trying their luck here every day. Look at this tablet. It says, if fate wills it, I'll give something to you as a gift. It's from the patriarch of the Huyen family. He used to be an emperor for a day, so he deserved to be called His Majesty. Moreover, he was the top alchemist back then. The teenager gave Feng Wu a gloating look and spoke in a tone that suggested he had been there before. Therefore, over the years, many capable cultivators have come here and either tried to force their way in or prostrate on the ground. They all want to meet him. But no. The teenager waved his hand. For years, I've never seen anyone go in. Feng Wu glanced at him. You're too young to make that claim. The teenager snorted. I have my dad and my grandpa. Neither of them has seen anyone go in or come out. I don't know if our patriarch is still there. Ichen. A cold, authoritative voice rang out. It was the voice of an old man. Yes, Grandpa, I'm here. I'll be right there. The teenager called Ichen turned around and called out to the old man in the room. He then turned back to Feng Wu with a casual smile on his face. Young lady, you're so unlucky, aren't you? The stone tablet hasn't moved, which means that you're not the chosen one either. Huyen Yichen grinned at Feng Wu and patted her on the shoulder to comfort her, but he was very pleased with himself. Feng Wu ignored him, for all her attention was on the inscription on the tablet. Nothing had happened, which meant that she hadn't been able to remove the barrier. Maybe she could try it with her own blood. Feng Wu was still thinking that way when she sensed a strange gaze on her. She was very acute. Even with her current cultivation level, she could still easily sense that she was being followed. As expected. The next moment, Little Phoenix told Feng Wu, "A pair of eyes are staring at us from the old tree to the northeast." Feng Wu looked in that direction involuntarily. Sensing Feng Wu's gaze, Huyen Yichen looked in that direction as well. He murmured to himself, "Wait, they're still here. Why are they still watching?" Chapter 3802, Northern Yen 4. Feng Wu asked, "Do you know who they are?" Huyen Yichen smiled. "Of course I do. They're from the princess's residence." An idea struck Feng Wu, but she feigned a confused look. "Why are the people of the princess's residence here?" Huyen Yichen gave it some thought and waved at Feng Wu. Feng Wu moved closer curiously. Huyen Yichen asked, "Do you really want to know?" Feng Wu said, "Yes." Huyen Yichen said, "Since you're that eager, I'll tell you." "Actually..." Huyen Yichen. A short distance away, the old man's voice rang out again. "Grandpa, I'm coming. You don't have to rush me like this," Huyen Yichen said grumpily. He then turned to Feng Wu. "Since you have nothing better to do, why don't you come have some tea at my place?" Feng Wu asked, "Am I disturbing you too much?" Huyen Yichen waved his hand. "No, it's not like that. My grandpa is the most hospitable person. It's so rare to find such a lovely girl who knows nothing. You have to play with me. Come with me." Huyen Yichen led the way, and Feng Wu followed him with Little Phoenix. Meanwhile, Feng Wu and Little Phoenix exchanged looks. The two of them were communicating in their heads. "This Huyen Yichen is an interesting character," Little Phoenix said. Feng Wu asked, "You saw it?" Little Phoenix nodded. "He has the fire and metal attributes, and they're very pure. He's a great weapon refiner, but he's still living here. It must have something to do with Yanbo." Feng Wu asked, "Is your little Yanbo really the best weapon refiner?" Little Phoenix glanced at Feng Wu. "Of course not. That has to be your master." But little Yanbo was a metal cultivator back then, and he was quite good at forging weapons. "Someone's watching. I'll sneak in tonight. If little Yanbo is there, I can ask him for the primary heaven pill." Recalling that Little Phoenix hadn't heard the conversation between the maids, Feng Wu told it what had happened. "What?" Little Phoenix almost exploded. "Little Yanbo is going to give that pill to that princess." "That can't be. That pill is meant for you. Didn't your master forbid you from refining your body? When the time comes, you'll take the pill, which will make you better than other geniuses who have worked hard for decades." "What princess? Are you kidding me?" Feng Wu asked, "Is that so?" Little Phoenix ran around in circles in the ring. "Has little Yanbo turned rogue?" "He shouldn't have. He was the most honest man back then. He was so quiet that he was easily bullied. All he ever did was forge weapons. Does he want to keep the pill for himself and give it to his offspring? I'm so mad." Seeing that Little Phoenix was so anxious that its eyes were bloodshot red, Feng Wu said, "It's only a rumor, not the truth. Don't worry. Princess Rao hasn't obtained the pill yet." Little Phoenix said, "No, I'll go have a look. I have to reason with Yanbo." After that, Little Phoenix dashed off, despite Feng Wu's intervention. Feng Wu sighed in resignation. She hoped that Little Phoenix was all right. She hoped that senior brother Huyen hadn't changed. "Kiddo, why are you sighing?" Chapter 3803, Stingy Shop, 1. Hearing Feng Wu's sigh, the teenager couldn't help but laugh. "Do you find my shop too shabby?" Feng Wu was woken up by Huyen Yichen's voice. When she came back to herself, she saw that they were outside his shop. Xinji shop. Feng Wu looked back at Huyen Yichen and wanted to laugh. That name. Huyen Yichen rolled his eyes at Feng Wu. Laugh all you want. Don't hold it back. Feng Wu chuckled. Huyen Yichen shrugged. I don't know why the old master gave us that name. It sounds so petty, and it doesn't mean well. My grandpa said that our patriarch came up with the name. I'm sure that's not true. What are you talking about? A slim, handsome old man strolled out of the shop. He glanced at Huyen Yichen, then glanced at Feng Wu out of the corner of his eye. He couldn't help but glance at her again. But that was it. He wasn't interested in her after that. Huyen Yichen greeted Feng Wu warmly. Come in and have a seat. His grandfather glanced at him. Who's that? Huyen Yichen gave the old man a warning glance. The old man pulled Huyen Yichen to the side and whispered to him. He frowned. Can that scrawny girl do it? Huyen Yichen said, although she's a scrawny girl, she looks full of vigor. Maybe she'll do. Old Huyen was still frowning. Meanwhile, Feng Wu was studying the shop with her hands behind her back. In short, it was a blacksmith's shop with all the necessary furnishings. Moreover, Feng Wu saw a few pieces of dark iron in a corner. Wait. Feng Wu's eyes lit up. Just then, Huyen Yichen walked up to Feng Wu and saw that she was interested in the iron in the corner of the wall. He said grumpily, these are just pieces of junk. It'll be a shame to throw them away, but they won't make anything useful. They're useless. Feng Wu turned around and looked at Huyen Yichen in bewilderment. The look gave Huyen Yichen the creeps. Why are you looking at me like that? Feng Wu stared at Huyen Yichen again. A piece of junk. Huyen Yichen nodded. Of course it's junk. If it really was dark iron, we would have used it to build weapons already. You know what? Although our shop is known as Stingy Shop, all the weapons we build are for influential people. Even the commander-in-chief of the empire's military uses weapons that my grandfather made. Feng Wu glanced at Huyen Yichen, indicating that she didn't believe him. Hey, why won't you believe me? Our shop is one of the most famous shops in northern Yen. Why won't you believe me? Huyen Yichen caught up with her and saw that Feng Wu was staring at the pieces in the corner again. He was speechless. You don't know anything. Why are you staring at that junk? Have you heard of Lord Timeless? Huyen Yichen glanced at Feng Wu. Feng Wu had never heard of that title until a few days ago. Lord Timeless? You mean Gui Tsulai? Feng Wu asked indifferently. That's right. It's him. He's the best swordsman in northern Yen. We made his sword. Feng Wu frowned a little. That's a peak sage-level weapon, right? You don't say. Huyen Yichen was elated to see that Feng Wu knew what it was. I saw my grandpa make strike one when I was little. Do you know how amazing our shop is now? Feng Wu rolled her eyes. I missed the part where that's my problem. Huyen Yichen grinned. Feng Wu frowned. What do you want? She saw the cunning smile on Huyen Yichen's face. Huyen Yichen didn't answer Feng Wu's question. Instead, he asked casually, now that you've mentioned it, may I ask where you're from and what's your name? Feng Wu said grumpily, is this a household register? Huyen Yichen was confused. Miss, what's that? Feng Wu waved her hand indifferently. I'm only joking. It's nothing. My surname is Feng, as in the wind that blows through water without leaving a trace. Feng isn't a big surname in northern Yen, but it's a major surname in the Zhenwo Empire. Feng Xiangnan, the northern Feng general, is a well-known figure in the Zhenwo Empire. I wonder if you've met him before? Feng Wu shook her head. Huyen Yichen was disappointed. You have a point. The general is so superior, and I can tell that you're just an ordinary girl. It's only normal that you haven't met him. As for Feng Sun, I'm sure you haven't met him either. Feng Sun. Feng Wu glanced at Huyen Yichen. Feng Nun? As in the son of northern Feng Mansion. You don't say. That's him. Feng Sun. Do you know him? Huyen Yichen stared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu thought, You didn't tell me if Feng Sun is your friend or an enemy. How am I supposed to know if I know him? Hence, Feng Wu didn't answer. The silence was the best answer. As expected, Huyen Yichen thought that Feng Wu didn't know who that was. He snorted. He set me up a long time ago, and I haven't had a chance to make trouble for him yet. Feng Wu was glad that she didn't reveal her relationship to Feng Sun. She wiped away her cold sweat and smiled at Huyen Yichen. He tricked you? What did he do? For as long as Feng Wu could remember, Feng Sun had been driven mad by Jun Linyuan and her, but she had never seen him setting anyone up. Huyen Yichen snorted. See those pieces of scrap metal in the corner? He sold them to me. He said they were sacred iron and could make a top-grade sacred weapon. I thought I could make another sword like Strike On, so of course I bought them. And with the iron, he gave me a drawing, saying that I could build a sacred-level arm of commandment. I believed him then. Do you know how much I paid for it? Feng Wu looked at him in bewilderment. 1 million. I spent 1 million yen coins to get back from someone else. I thought I could forge the arm, but I only realized later that the iron was fake. There was only a layer of dark iron on the outside, but it was fake on the inside. Huyen Yichen was so frustrated that he almost stomped his foot. Feng Wu glanced at him. The fact that he was still so angry showed how much he hated Feng Sun. When did it happen? Feng Wu asked curiously. Huyen Yi said, when we were 10. Feng Wu was speechless. It had been years. However, 10 years ago, Huyen Yichen was able to make a deal with Feng Sun, and he was the buyer. Chapter 3804, Stingy Shop, 2. However, Huyen Yichen was able to make a deal with Feng Sun 10 years ago, not to mention that he was Feng Sun's buyer. That was proof enough of Huyen Yichen's background. That made sense. Not everyone could address Huyen Yanba as their patriarch. Huyen Yichen was still angry. He led Feng Wu to the pile of stones and said grumpily, Look at these pieces of junk. Do you know why I kept them here instead of throwing them away? You can't bring yourself to part with them? Feng Wu tried to provoke him. Of course not. The teenager stomped his foot in frustration. I want them to stay here and remind me all the time that I have to get back at Feng Sun. I want to wash away my humiliation in front of my brothers. Feng Wu admired him for his pride. Huyen Yichen smacked his forehead. Hey, why am I telling you that? Enough with the junk. We have more serious matters at hand. Feng Wu was confused. What do you mean? Huyen Yichen scratched his head and grinned. How about you donate something? Feng Wu asked, What? Huyen Yichen spread out his hands. It's not much. Just a little blood will do. Just give me a little blood. Feng Wu stared at him. Why do you need it? Huyen Yichen led Feng Wu to an iron table and said, This is my new weapon, the ultimate yang fork. Look, it's a semi-saint weapon. Feng Wu said, So what? Huyen Yichen said obsequiously, You look so young. I bet you don't know anything. Feng Wu knew that such a supreme-grade weapon had to be nourished with human blood, especially the blood of an innocent girl. Feng Wu shook her head. No. Huyen Yichen was confused. Why not? I don't need much. Just a bowl will do. But Feng Wu wouldn't let him. Her blood was the divine phoenix blood, and every drop was precious, let alone a bowl. Feng Wu wouldn't mind if it was a divine weapon, but Huyen Yichen's weapon was obviously a semi-saint one. Feng Wu shook her head again. Not with this weapon. Huyen Yichen pleaded with Feng Wu. Gosh, please. Please. Where else am I going to find a girl with such clean eyes? Feng Wu glanced at Huyen Yichen. No. Huyen Yichen said, What do I have to do to make you say yes? Feng Wu glanced at him. You're much more capable than I am. If you want my blood, you can force me. Why don't you do that? Huyen Yichen said grumpily, I'm not in the habit of forcing myself on other people. Plus, you don't have the divine phoenix blood. If it's the legendary divine phoenix blood of the Junhua Empire, I might actually force you to give it to me. Feng Wu stared at him. You really will do that? Huyen Yichen smiled bitterly. The divine phoenix blood is the best bloodline in the world. Although my ultimate yang fork is good, it's only a saint level one. It'll be such a waste if I use the divine phoenix blood on it. I'll kill myself if I do that. No, I won't try to take the divine phoenix blood by force. Huini Chen heaved a long sigh. But I'm still curious. What will happen if I add the divine phoenix blood? I can't wait to see it. The divine phoenix blood was equivalent to Feng Wu herself. Therefore, if Feng Wu contributed her blood, her identity would become very obvious. That you're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.